This is not a dream.
Phil walks the tree line when the sun goes down. Boots in the gravel on the edge of town. Backpack rattles with a lantern and a map, looking for the things that never make the trap. Old folks whisper when they see him pass. Boys been chasing shadows in the midnight grass. But Phil just smiles at the cold night air, 'cause something out there knows he's there. In the rustle of leaves, in the creak of the pine, in the fog where the footprints twist the line. He's the Dogman, TP hunter, roving through the night, chasing ghostly echoes in the pale moonlight. From forgotten forests to the deserts deep, where the old bones hide and the spirits creep. With a camera and courage and a trail to see, he'll follow any legend through eternity. Yeah, the world's full of whispers most folks never see, but they all know Phil. He slept in ruins where the cold winds cry. Watch strange lights dancing in a cold black sky. Track bent branches where the tall grass sways. Heard something breathing in the forest haze. Every dusty road and every haunted bend holds another secret he's about to defend. running wild and free.
Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious boomerang. We're going to have a lot of long words on this one. A very good evening to everybody who's watching off to the Friday Night Files. This is a Dogman TP hunting production. And if you're listening to this, it will be on the Interdimensional Voyagers podcast as well. Thank you very much for being here. We've got a very special guest. Very deep thinking man. No flies on him, basically. Andy Mercer. Now, anyone who is anyone in the paranormal field will recognize that name. So we're very lucky to have him on. Before we bring him on, I shall bring up the co-host as well, the Flippity Gibbet of Facebook, the Gothic Goddess of YouTube. Yes, Natalie Mosley. Hello.
You know it's Mosley and not Mosley, don't you? I'm
never
never quite sure if you do that on purpose to wind me up or not.
Yeah.
It's hard to tell sometimes.
Yeah.
But I feel like I'm going to need my glasses for this chat as well, so that I look a little bit more intelligent.
I don't need these. Only put them on to make me look more intelligent.
I was going to say, I think
there's
we both need our goggles
there's no
on
lenses
today.
in them. There's no lens in this. It's just a frame.
It's just your eyes reflecting the light. But do you know what amuses me as well is like your intro song? It says like Phil running wild and free, and I have these little visions of this little guy running around like with his little torch in the
Yeah, I do.
Your hair sticking out in all directions, looking for Dogman in the forest.
Yeah, usually in my gym jams or something, you know, on the leopard skin mankini.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then everyone's running after you, trying to get you back to the asylum.
Yeah. No, they'll never put me in that rubber room again. Yeah. Although I did learn to manipulate those crayons with my feet quite nicely, actually.
Oh, yeah. Did some nice artwork on the walls.
It takes a little while to do, you know, when you're on your back, with your hands behind your back, you know, trying to scribble your name out on the wall with your toes.
Like chewing on the crayon ends.
Yeah, I get there. How are you anyway? You all right?
I'm not too bad, thank you. It's a bit less windswept today.
Yeah, I was going to say, did you jump overboard or something? What happened? What was it, North Sea?
The North? When?
Well, your life jacket.
Oh, I was trying to figure out where this one was going because the other day when we had the storm, I was driving back from the horses, come up the woods and over the hill. The rain was going horizontal and I nearly got taken out by a wheelie bin going across the road. It's back, so I was like getting flashbacks to that. It's like, to stop me drowning, just in case.
I just want to give a shout out to Roxy's daughter, Ellie. It's her birthday today, so happy birthday, Ellie.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Ellie. Happy birthday to you. Meow. She'll know that one. It's an in-joke.
Okay.
Right, okay. Right then. So what we're going to do, we're going to bring on our guest, Andy Mercer. Let's see if he's ready. He should be ready. I think he is. Yeah. Oh, yeah, he is. Yeah. Okay, let's bring him on. Hello.
Good evening.
Very good evening.
Yeah. I feel like I need to be in the dark a little bit more. We're being very dramatic today.
Yeah.
There's a very sunny head. That's the only reason to the light off. You see, it's now glowing. So.
That's all right. You can stay in the dark if you feel better. It adds to the ambience.
Yeah, yeah. How you been, Andy?
I am pretty good. Yes, been quite busy working on my next book project, which is running a little late. It's supposed to be finished by now, but some other things going on this year. It's been a bit delayed, but it's keeping me busy and things are going well. I have one question though. I have to ask this question: where on earth did you get that music from?
Oh, that was done for me. That was done by Kate Moonbeam. Yeah, she put it together for me. So yeah, Phil running wild and free.
Yeah, I had one as well. But it sounded a lot like Evanescence.
Oh,
which was quite. And then there was a second version. I preferred the second version, but I can't remember what the comparison was. But it sounded a lot more dramatic. But it was more melodic rock than the Evanescence sort of like type rock. So I couldn't decide between the two. But yeah, we'll have to shoot it over to Phil. She'll have to have a word with Kate, see if she can make you one.
as Phil knows from conversation we had during the week, I like very, 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 very heavy metal, very extreme deathcore. So my theme tune would be probably unplayable. If I would have a
I was going to say you're a little bit heavier than me. I was like, I'm normally listening to like things a little bit heavier than Evanescence, but I'm not quite that heavy.
A band called Humanity's Last Breath, which is probably one of the heaviest around. It's a subgenre of deathcore called gent. It's like very heavy, so it would probably blow people's eardrums off.
Yeah, I did play that on the storyboard I did for you for this show. Yeah, I did play it. It's actually, do you know what? It's not too bad, really. You know, it's okay. You know, it's okay. You know what I mean? It's not just. I mean, it sounded a lot like my mother, really. You know.
Well,
seriously, when she's got a very sort of deep and like she used to be an ex-smoker. You know, she's an ex-smoker. She used to smoke, so she's got she's got that. Oh, bless her.
You would know that I used to be in a singer in a death metal band about 30 years ago, but I can still do the very deep growling voice quite easily. So which probably helped deep anyway. But yeah, I can sing like that. Well, if you call it singing, I can vocalize like that, shall we say? It tends to be.
Did they? I've got to take my hat off to some of these like these heavy rock guys because they sing almost to the point of like the larynx you can see reverberating in their throat. It's like kind of, I mean, they obviously put that on, they bring their voice down to that level, but it must, when they leave stage, you know, I can imagine them sort of like talking like Tweety Pie.
Well, if you know how to do it properly, it's actually quite easy. You use what's called the false vocal cords, which are in the back of your throat, but they can vibrate slower and heavier, so they can produce that very deeper voice.
I like that.
There's one band in particular I think is quite funny. There's a band called Lorna Shore, which I'm also a very big fan of. But their singer looks like he should be in a pop band. He's got like sort of blondish curly hair. It's all shaved on one side. But he looks like small, diminutive bloke. He looks like he should be like a chihuahua, but sings like a bleating timber wolf. He's got a very powerful, deep voice when he gets going. And you just wouldn't imagine it to look at the guy. You really wouldn't expect him to sound like that. But he does.
That's like a lot of them are shorter than they look because Danny from Cradle of Filth is about this high as well, isn't he?
Yeah,
like,
if
they're even still going.
Yeah.
Does that mean, is there a height restriction on it then, do you think? Either really tall and skinny with this sort of like the Norwegian, Swedish type death metal, or you
all get down and go really strong like that. The two ones a bit stretched.
Sort of vibrates you down a bit and like compresses everything.
More to the black metal, which is very, it's up here somewhere, you know, like that. So, but then they're tall and thin, so they stretched out the vocal cords in the other direction rather than pulling them out. Planning, was it?
Oh,
right, I'm going to just quickly run through some people that have come on the chat. We normally have quite a busy chat. Right, you've got MT Paranormal. Hello, Mike. Hope you're keeping well. It's been a while since we've spoken, Mike. I've got to catch up. I've got to be honest, I've been a bit lazy. I've got to catch up with your channel a little bit. But he does some brilliant paranormal stuff. He is out there in the thick of it at night, in woods, forests, in the States. He's very good. He's got a lot of equipment as well, you know. Right. We've also right. We've got Kate. Very good evening, Kate. She's the one that does the title tune for us. Very very talented lady. Got let's have a look. Susan Woosden. Hello, Susan. She runs Ghost and Paranormal Society, which is based in Clacton-on-Sea. Very good group, small group, but a good group. Very genuine. You know, they're non-profit. Very very genuine group. Let's have a look. See who else we have on here. Hang on. We've got some. Got Jane Mosley. I say her name correctly, you see. Hello, Jane.
Say it properly, otherwise she'll be around your door.
Yes.
Around the ear off.
I hope you're keeping well, Jane. That's
My mum.
yeah, that's her mum.
For some reason, she likes listening to the podcast. I don't know why.
Yeah.
So I have to be on best behaviour every week.
Yeah, so I have to be on good behaviour. I have to sort of when she's on the chat.
Yeah. Or she'll send the mug back, won't she?
Exactly. In pieces. Probably send it round my head or something.
Like
we have Drew Hollings. Hello, Drew. Thank you very much for joining. We also got Keith Aston. Wouldn't be anything without you, mate. I'm so glad to welcome you back. It's lovely having you back, and you are moderator as well. So we've got Larry Luttrell, moderator. We've got Dawn, which is Sasquatch sister, moderator, and Kate as well. And of course, Roxy B, who is the admin. Right, so let's have a little look. Oh, who's this? We've got Michigan Cryptid. Hey, y'all. Yes, hey. I hope you're keeping well. Thank you for joining, sir. Lovely. Ready Steady Retro. Very interesting lady. I like Ready Steady Retro. She's got some cool stories. Brian C UK. Hi, Phil. Chat, hope you're keeping well. Yes, keeping very well. Thank you very much, Brian. Thank you for joining. Good to see you here. Let's have a quick look. Michigan, Brian. Yep. Kate. I will get back to the chats as the evening progresses. Right, let's continue on. Thank you, Kate, also for putting the links up for everybody. Do appreciate that. I'm going to put the chats up on screen, and because I've done that, I'm going to alter the screen about, because it's not fair for Natalie to have the chats like that. Maybe, do you know what, people? I think I might just turn it round so it's that way. Okay. And I will change the background for you. Right. Andy. When did you start getting into the paranormal, and was it something that kind of you naturally organically came into because strange things happened when you were younger? Were you questioning nature about these sort of things?
Well, the short answer is yes. I had an experience when I was about 9 or 10 years old that really mystified me, and it still mystifies me. It was a very interesting encounter. It was not some dark haunted mansion house. It was in the middle of a summer day in the daylight, just in a country park. Do you want the full story? I'll give you the full story. Here, where I used to live in Essex, there is a place called Coalhouse Fort. Now, it's a fort that was built originally in Napoleonic times and then was built up more in the First World War and then again in the Second World War. It was used as a protection for the Thames. It looks over the Thames estuary, so it was designed to look out for obviously any ships coming through or aircraft in the Second World War. It had been in use, say, since the First World War, continuing, but by the 1970s, 80s, it was completely closed down. It was abandoned. It was not used. It was considered unsafe. Parts of the building were collapsing. So it was fenced off, corrugating iron surrounding it all the way around. But it was in the middle of a country park. And my family and I used to go there quite often in the summer, as other families did, to sort of have a picnic or whatever, just sit on the grass and just relax. And on this particular day, myself, my brother, and one of the kids had got into the fort because the corrugated iron was surrounding it, but there were lots of gaps. It was easy to get into it. So we were in the middle of what would be like the parade yard, the court ground. It's quite large. It's gravel ground. It's just a large area surrounded by the buildings all the way around. Like it's surrounded completely. And we were playing football, and one moment I was just sort of looked up to one side of me, and I saw two men in military uniform. They were about 10 feet away from me, just walking past. And being sort of 19, he didn't go register at first. I thought, okay. Looked away, looked back, and they were gone. But they were there for about 3 or 4 seconds. They were walking past, completely silent. Now, bearing in mind it's gravel ground. I mean, the kids were playing football. They were a bit away from where I was standing. But they were there. They just walked past me, and the way they were heading was a brick wall. So there's no way they could have gone anywhere. Now, there was no kind of reenactment groups here or anything like that. It was just closed down, condemned as dangerous. So I have no idea who they were or how they were there. The thing I noticed was the uniform was like a sort of mid-light brown colour. They had like a webbing bandaging around the lower halves of the legs from the knee downwards, which I later found out is First World War uniform, not using the Second World War. So why the two were there, what they were doing, I have no idea. But they were there and then they were gone. But they were as real as anything, just completely solid people. And so, but there was no sound, there was nothing. So literally, I looked at them, and even now, because this is like sort of nearly 50 years later, I can still see them. It was like, what on earth was that? But it just because I was a kid, it didn't really register until I looked at the second time and they were gone. I was, whoa, that is strange. I remember going outside back to my parents or my nan and aunt were there and said to them what I'd just seen, and was like, oh, really? Well, that's interesting. That was it. I mean, I don't think they believed me for a moment, but I knew what I'd seen. It was absolutely 100% real. It was a summer's day, sunny, bright sunshine, lovely day, and there were these two guys, no more than 10, 15 feet at most away from me, just walked past in military uniform, and it really was one of those moments of what on earth. And I became quite obsessive with the idea of what on earth I'd seen, and went to the library, and of course I knew of ghosts, that kind of thing. I was getting out books on ghosts and reading about ghosts, and from there really that sort of began the interest. It kind of just grew and evolved from that first experience. When I say it was no more than about 10, 11 years old at most. And it was just one of those things. It's like, what on earth did I see? And it's always stayed with me as an interest because of this very strange experience. So that's really how it began for me.
Did you tell a responsible adult that you were with, basically like parents or?
Yeah, so I went back to them and said, I've just seen these two men walking around in uniform. And their response was, oh, really, darling? That's nice. It didn't believe me. It didn't believe me at all. But,
that's nice.
Oh, great. It's again, as I got old, my dad's actually got some interest. My mum doesn't believe any of this sort of stuff, but I know what I saw. You know, it wasn't imagination. It wasn't me just making stories up. I just saw those two men as real as anything. They weren't like wispy or transparent. They were just like two physical men walking past, but as I say, on gravel, but no sound. That's the one thing that struck me. I could hear the kids playing the football nearby. I'd kind of pull over to one side. They were further over this small grass area. This is like a gravelled area. And if anyone's ever been to cold asphalt, you'll know the area I'm talking right in the middle. It's like a massive big courtyard. And I just walked towards, well, there must have been a door there once or a building or something. But by this point, where it had been obviously readapted for the Second World War, so I knew they built it up further. Found this out later, of course. So they changed the layout to become bigger and was different. So they're obviously walking towards what would have been perhaps a door when it was in the First World War. Because that's what they were wearing. And again, it was used in the First World War because we're looking for zeppelins going over and of course ships coming across, and they did shoot a zeppelin down apparently during the First World War at the base. So it was saw action. So it was definitely real. I was in there were definitely people stationed there. Again, I found this all like years later. Didn't know at the time, of course. But that just stayed with me as an experience as being the first thing that really caught my attention.
Yeah.
These two guys.
Very limiting as well. You know, when you go to the library when you're a kid, because I mean, you're about. I think we're about the same age. You know, I'm 32. But
I was going to say we're all 21 here, aren't we?
In the libraries, all it was that they had that archetypal book which had kind of like the monk by the side of the altar, and you had that other apparition coming down the stairs as well.
Absolutely.
It was very limited. I remember going to Greenford Library where I lived in Greenford Estates, and I went there. And it was like you had a Loch Ness book on Loch Ness Monster. But yeah, very, very few books there was in referencing for anything like that. You know,
I'd have to interject. I was quite surprised. This is Basildon, where I used to live. The library there was actually really good. It had quite a good selection of books in there. I mean, I discovered books like there's a book called Francis Barrett's The Magus, which is like a major occult text. They had it in the library, which really is
really?
Yeah, that really is
Run.
Yeah, I took that out. I lost count of time I took that out before I actually got a copy myself, and I was in my teens. Like, it was like, I was really surprised what they had there. A lot of good ghost stories. I discovered the ghostwriter M.R. James because of looking for ghost books in the library. I mean, he's fiction, obviously, but
Yeah, M.R. James, yeah.
It's
That's strange.
Yeah,
Wonder if you've just had a lot of ghosts, because like when I was a teenager, we lived in Wales, and it was mainly books on dowsing, standing stones, and megaliths. Because obviously we were in Wales. I don't remember a lot of ghost books in there, but there was a lot on dowsing, and so you must have been in the more more paranormal inclined readership in the library than my way.
The head librarian has a lot of control about what could be stocked in those days. So clearly, whoever's in charge was interested in the paranormal as well. They seem to have been able to get these books in.
Just running ghost books through the library, basically.
With those soldiers in mind, I mean that's kind of like bordering on the stone tape theory, you know, like a replay.
That was very it was, yeah. So I didn't get any sense they were aware of me at all. They were just literally just walking past.
I mean, I know when we sort of like we met at that Colchester Castle when I was anything, and that's where I would ordinarily have expected when I was drifting off with my head torch and my camera and stuff. That's what I was expecting. I was expecting a lot of replays of previous enactments of kind of people or, you know, of the period walking through. And is that something that, you know, you think is happening? Do you think that does happen? Or do you think that energies are stored in bricks, stored in the mortar, the very fiber of a building? Do you think it can cough back up a projection of what's happened?
You might think of it more along the lines of the EM, electromagnetic field of an area, because you can have obviously buildings that have completely disappeared and still see the paranormal occurrences happening because the energy in the area seems to store something. I've always been of kind of the opinion that it's an interaction between us, our brains, and the environment, picking up the signals of the environment around us. Whether they are literally there, whether those men were literally there walking past me, or it was just obviously a kind of mental projection of them, I don't know. But I always see it as kind of interaction between the two. So an area can have energy that's stored an experience that then gets replayed. I mean, a classic example of that is, funny enough, where I'm going this weekend. I'll tell you more about it a bit later on, so I'm sure you'll be interested. But the building we're investigating is actually on the site of a previous building. And one of the better known sightings of ghostly apparitions in the building that's there now is of a woman on the stairs, but she's not quite on the stairs. She's a bit off of them. And we know from historic research, the previous building, the staircase, was in a similar position to the current building. So she's probably walking up or down the original staircases of the previous building. But because they're close to each other, she appears to be near them, but not on them. So, you know, the building's gone, completely demolished. There was a small section of it left, actually, but that particular area of the building's completely gone. So it leaves the question of the building that's there now was never lived in. So whatever you're seeing is a replay of a random event from the previous building that somehow gets replayed. I mean, the question you have to ask yourself, which would be, if there's no one around and no equipment around, do these things ever get seen? Now, we know we've all caught stuff on camera that have been locked off in rooms where no one's present, and it's captured stuff. I'm sure you've had that. And of course, we are there, we see things ourselves directly. But if there's nothing there to record the event or energize the area's energy, which is what I think happens with cameras as well, they're interacting there, then does anything actually occur? But certainly the idea that it's the environment, the energies in the area that are what are recording these events, and something triggers the replay. again, don't exactly know what the mechanisms are. I don't think there is a rationally definable mechanism you can say this is the reason why these happen. It seems to happen almost at random. You can be at a place for days and nothing happens, go a dozen times, get 0. Next group to go there, get something fantastic. The next day, it's like, well, why did I not get anything? I've been on those kind of more longer term investigations. We keep going back to a place and nothing really seems to happen. And then someone else has the one-off occasion or they get something. So there's no logical, rational pattern you can determine. But I think it's the energies of the area is the thing that somehow stores the experience, whatever it might be.
I wonder if the building has some, or a building has some effect, because I'm just thinking about it with you saying about the stairs. There's another building on top of it, and she's slightly off kilter with the stairs. But if you actually took the building away, we don't see ghosts hovering about 20 feet up, going up and down. So I wonder if the building interacts with the environment somehow, and then once that building's no longer there, whatever it is that's going up and down the hypothetical stairs is no longer able to go up and down the stairs. Or whether, like you say, the building itself is interacting with the environment and creating a field of sorts, and then once that goes, like, the field collapses a bit, and that's why. Because otherwise, I was just thinking about it. When they drop all the high rise flats and that, and they do the demolishing and that, and if you think you have like a haunted apartment, you'd be seeing people walking around about like 10 stories up, wouldn't you? You'd be like, what's going? I mean, I don't know if they do, like you're saying, whether we just don't clock it because there's nobody, close enough to see it. That's an interesting thought.
Isn't it thought, actually? I've ever seen a sort of figure sort of 20 feet in the air walking along because the building is disappeared. But I think you're going to something there as well. I think you're right. There is a certain sense of whatever replaces it also contains the energy as well that continues. I mean, in terms of a place interacting with where you're going, again, I won't name the place yet. I think we'll keep that for later. But where I'm going at the weekend is the one place I would say more than anywhere else does react to whoever's there. No doubt about it in my mind. Back in the early 2000s, I was involved very regularly with a company called Fright Nights, who were the original ghost investigation company that set up the public could go along to. There's hundreds of them now, but Mystery Mag and Fright Nights, we've got one came for the other, is the original one. And we went to Woodchester Mansion, I'll name it. We went there regularly in about 2002, I think it was, 2003. We had like a long kind of regular events going on, and I was on most of them. And you could tell the difference if the group who paid to come along were like a bit flat, not that bothered, not that interested. Nothing much happened. The building definitely reacted. If you were enthusiastic and excited to be there, looking forward to, or scared to leave, whichever one you would put it, then the place reacted. And when other locations, to a certain degree, have always done that, I think, but never more than at Woodchester Mansion. It seems to react to the people in the environment more than anywhere else. So that is definitely a part of the place. So it is that there is the idea, I'd say Ian Field I stick with rather than stone take physical building, but the physical properties of a place can perhaps be part of the energizing process. But our interaction with it is probably the critical factor that really makes these things come to life. I was going to say with odd word to use the animal, but yes, become reactive to our presence. Absolutely.
Do you know, Susan brought up, and Kate, thank you very much. You're very generous. Do appreciate that. And do you know, brings up just a quick thing. All right, because I'm going ahead of myself. Hang on, I'm a bit ADHD. Susan brought up a thing about she used to go to the library. And when she went to the library, she saw books on Borley Rectory. Now, that brings up about, yes, Andy. Yes, indeed. I can see your face. Yes, exactly. The lady coming down the staircase, which is above the staircase, is the same as Borley Rectory, because there's a nun, very famous, in a nun's walk. And she has been spotted and seen where she walks above the ground, slightly above the ground. I think it's about... there was a local builder, famous local builder, doing some works there with colleagues, and he saw the nun, and she was actually floating above ground level, because obviously the ground was higher then. It's just sunk since the time she was deceased. So it bears out. It does bear out what Andy's saying with energies then. And the energies then being static
Hmm.
and just replaying that static replay, you know, and it's almost as if they are incapable. They are incapable of adjusting to the reality that we're looking at the moment, but we're still able to view them in their static state and running through their life that they had. So it's a strange thing. But Brawley Rectory, yeah, that when I saw that message, I thought, oh yeah, that's a I'm going to just put up quickly because you have, Andy, your Facebook page. Just want to show people your Facebook page here. Right, we've got Ninth Circle Press. This is Andy's Facebook page. 3,400 followers. Wow. That puts me to shame, honestly.
More for the occult, to be honest with you. That's what I'm probably best known for these days.
Do you have? Were you going this weekend? Have you put it on your Facebook? Where you going?
No, I won't yet. Usually after the effect, after the event, shall we say?
Okay. Oh, you're a Jean-Michel Jarre fan. So am I.
Piece of music. You have to listen to the Equinox on the Equinox. I mean, it's got to be done, isn't it? I've been doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. I do you know Oxygen, Equinox, you know, all Jean-Michel Jarre stuff. I just love. I went to see him at the Docklands. You know, when he was at Docklands.
Was that?
Yeah.
Well, when was that? Early 2000s? No, it was 90s, wasn't it?
Oh, that was 1997, 6, 7.
Do you remember
Was it?
Second night? Because I know the first night was I was there. The second night it rained, which was a bit annoying. But,
yeah. No. I think we were there same time then, yeah. Because across the river, you saw that empty kind of factory, and it just lit up full of the pyrotechnics, and it looked like a fire inside the building across the river. Yeah. It was a fantastic concert. Absolutely one-off. I thoroughly enjoyed that.
I've met who actually were at that concert as well, because it was 20,000 people. No, it was like 50, 60,000. It was massive. So quite a lot of Londoners did go along to it. Keep running into
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a shame. I would have liked to have seen the Notre Dame one he did.
Yeah,
that looked pretty cool. That looked pretty cool. But yeah, no, Jean-Michel Jarre, brilliant. Yeah, absolutely excellent. I remember sort of at the same time I was listening to Oxygen, Star Wars came out. And Star Wars was a big thing, and I remember being as a kid. This is how you know, imagination goes. I used to be underneath the dining room table, flip the chair up, and the legs of the chair would be the turret of the gun on a Millennium Falcon. Yeah, and every time my sister came into the room, I'd like sort of like kind of just attack her, you know. It's a laser gun, and she would just go. God, he's so stupid. Because she was 6 years older than me. So my sister was, oh, he's such a stupid boy.
Particularly the early Jean-Michel Jarre. Check out a German guy called Klaus Schulz. He was in Tangerine Dream at first when it first started, but left them long ago. But he unfortunately passed away recently. But Klaus Schulz, check him out. His stuff is a similar vein. I prefer his stuff, to be honest with you. It's more energized. It's really quite flowing. But that's not Jean-Michel Jarre stuff. But yeah, Klaus Schulz, anybody, if you like Jean-Michel Jarre, look for Klaus Schulz.
Yeah, yes. I've look at that. I've got your website as well for Ninth Circle. I just want to show people this one. Just if you could explain for people, you know, about your website, what you do. I know what you do, but if you just explain.
Sure. Well, I publish esoteric occult books under the banner of Ninth Circle Press. The Ninth Circle comes from Dante's Inferno. The Ninth Circle is the deepest level of hell, where Satan is frozen in ice. I'm a huge fan of Dante's Inferno. I read it as a kid and got quite spooked by it. The parts I understood, because it's not easiest to read, because it's originally in 13th century or 12th century Italian. So it's not the easiest to read. Even the translations aren't brilliant, but there are some very good ones now. But that's why I chose that name, because it is, you know, we are into the occult, so we're going to be condemned to hell without a doubt. You know, as far as Dante is concerned, we're all destined for the deeper regions of hell. But yeah, so I've started a few years ago. My kind of semi-retired psychotherapist, did that for like 20 years, and decided to move away from where I was living, to move from Essex to over here in the West Country, and basically to start up the publishing company. I've been writing a few books as well, a few been published. So, but it's difficult to make a living as a writer, but as a publisher, you've got a better chance. So that's what I've been doing. So it's they're all fairly limited print runs, always fairly short. They're quite specialist text, they're kind of advanced stuff.
Yeah, because when I was looking at this, you've got quite a few authors on here as well.
Yeah, that's my team. Yeah, some of the books are already out, others are going to come out in the next year or so. My diary is about a year ahead of publisher titles. I only do about 3 or 4 a year, so it's a slow, because I do everything. I write some obviously, but I do all the editing, the copy work, the layouts for the printer, and sort that with the printer, get the printer to print them, and then I distribute them myself. I pack them up and send them off. I'm cheap bottle washer, as they say.
Because when I was first looking at it, I like kind of it just that chap there, Ben Tweedle, in that photo, I thought was Rasputin.
It's a brilliant picture, isn't it? He absolutely loves it. And I'll tell you about his partner, but it's a really good picture. He's predominantly known for writing weird fiction, which is a more of a long-term plan. It's not something I'm doing yet, but we've talked about doing something that's. He's written something that's very occult related, that potentially is more than just fiction, which we've talked before about him doing an edition of at some point in the future. But he's a good mate of mine, so he's up there partly because he's a good friend, and he's been very supportive of what I do. He's the manager of a shop called Courtyard Books in Glastonbury, which is probably the best occult bookshop in the country.
Oh, okay.
Second hand is fantastic, definitely. And so if you look for Courtyard Books, then you probably find me.
Okay, right, all right. So people, that's it. Ninth Circle Press. So check it out. Okay, and if at all possible, kind of like give a review. That's always possible. And also with Andy's Facebook page as well. Please do, give it a follow. If you want to give my one a follow as well, it'd be lovely. But that'd be great. With Faust, it's with the Ninth Circle of Hell, it's quite interesting. I think we'll go in a little while. We'll go into that a little bit, because I was reading Montague Summers. Have you heard of him?
Of course.
Yeah. He's an interesting character. Very interesting character.
Leaning obviously back and been in the clergy, but yes. So we'll sort of dive a bit deeper into that, because we'll have another guy on soon, just popping on really is a friend of the channels, and his because my knowledge of deeper kind of like occult texts and things is limited, Andy. It is limited. I don't have your knowledge base that you have, I must admit. About 40 years of research. So,
yeah, exactly. So right. So that's a kid. When you now. There's kind of like a bit of a split off that I can see with you. What that happened? You're interested in one part with the ghosts and the paranormal, but then are you also interested in the more mediumship and the more psychic side of the paranormal?
Again, because of personal experiences. Absolutely. I can give you a kind of there was a sort of a bridging moment between the two areas. I mentioned briefly that the library had things like Francis Barrett's The Magus. They had books on the occult in there, and I was interested as a parallel to the ghost stuff as other books. And I came across an organization called the Hermetic Order of Golden Dawn, which was a group from the late 1800s who were kind of revitalized modern occultism. They were a very, very significant group. The original group didn't last very long, but kind of broke up into various splinter groups, one of which was Alistair Crowley, who many people may have heard of, was involved in as well. But I came across all their ritual material. There was a book called The Complete Works of Golden Dawn, which again I was able to order through the library. I think it came from London or something, but you could service, which is quite amazing. And got hold of it, and again, it was one I kept checking out, and hand copied quite a few of the rituals in there because it was like, oh, I don't want to lose this book. I didn't know. When I talk to teenagers, I didn't know I could get these books for myself. There was no sort of Amazon to order them from. You had to just get what you could get. And I found out bookshops in London later on that stopped this sort of stuff. But at this point, I didn't have much money. I was a teenager. And I started trying some of the rituals out, saying these words and waving your hands about and doing all sorts of things. And I felt something from them. It's the best way to describe it. I felt a connection with something. It's like I could feel energy around me. It's the best way to describe it. And it wasn't just my imagination. I could feel this stuff. It was absolutely real experience of something was happening. And what I would say later on was that they were attuning me to stuff, attuning me to the other world, or whatever you want to call it, the energies around us. And it was definitely having a developmental effect. Now, a lot of people these days go to like spiritualist churches to do developmental courses in mediumship and that kind of stuff. But there was nothing like where I lived at all. Nothing I knew about. Anyway, there was, but I knew nothing about it. So I was literally just working on my own and following this Golden Storm rituals, learning to use tarot cards, all that kind of stuff. And working with tarot was what made me think there's something going on here. I was giving friends readings, and I was getting images of stuff that were going on in their lives they hadn't told me about, and I described stuff to them. They were a bit like, "Whoa, how do you know about that?" And so, I don't know. I'm just seeing it. And someone say, "Well, someone's told you about that kind of thing." But it was just imagery and feelings I was picking up on them. Often, like with a girl, I particularly liked hadn't told. There's one friend in particular who just couldn't believe it because he never told anybody about this girl, and he was really mad on her. I was like, "Just describe what you look like to him." And he was quite, "How the hell do you know that?" I said, "I don't know. This is what I get." So that was something I realised I was able to do, and how it developed more with the ghost stuff was, and particularly when I work with Fright Nights, I have this kind of like a locations ability. I can see a place, how it used to look in the past, and describe what I'm seeing, how the building would have once looked, people in it. Just again, it's just snapshots, not talking to anything, interacting with anything. It was more like a snapshot of the past. And I was taking places I didn't know about. I was basically tested, what do you see? What are you getting? And I describe it and was been told afterwards, you're pretty accurate at that. You do know this place. How do you know this? I don't know. I'd close my eyes. I'd just not even think of anything particular. I let whatever's there come to me, and that's what started to happen with those locations. But it was all part of this whole journey of exploration with the esoteric stuff. Jumping forward a little bit into my early 20s, I discovered a place called Atlantis Bookshop in London, which was a brilliant little bookshop, which is still going. I'm quite friendly with the owners there. And it was only a couple of tube stops from where I was working at the time. My first major job in London was at the Royal Exchange, which is in the middle of London, in the financial district. And the Atlantis was maybe 2 or 3 stops away to visit. And I'd gone there and bought a book called The Secret Grimoire of Turia. Now, it's got a history in itself, and I actually gave a talk in January at the Occult Conference in Glastonbury. I talked about my experience of working with this particular book. It was my first real attempt at working with proper ritual magic. And what you do is you create certain items to use for the ritual work. You have, say, certain invocations for spirits, demons, angels, whatever you call them, to appear. And I had an absolute sense there was something with me when I did those things. It was really was a sense. It was one of, as I said in the talk, the funny thing was, it was like standing in front of me or to the side of me. It was just around me. I could feel the energy. I mean, the air kind of buzzing around me. I was doing this sort of thing in the middle of the night because I was living with my parents at the time, so I couldn't start doing strange rituals in the early afternoon. They noticed what was going on. So it was often gone to bed and just quietly announced this stuff. And what I noticed was it was there. There are things you do which are to banish the things afterwards, and I'd do the banishments. And there was still a sense of energy around me. And often, for a good 2 or 3 days afterwards, things would happen in my room. Things would get moved around. Things would disappear. Nothing major, nothing substantial. Just little objects would be in a different spot. I'd say to my mum, "Did you move? Did you not be in your room at all?" Or they'd just disappear for a couple of days, and then they'd return to me in a different place in my room. So there was some residual effect as well. So it left me convinced I was working with something, and over the years, or the whole story, I've got a much clearer sense of what it is I work with. But one of the things that really captured my attention was a thing called Enochian magic, Dr. John Dee, which was the next read in the early 20s.
Yeah.
That completely blew my brains out. I was working with, of course, scrying, and some of the scrying work involves kind of what you might call astral projection, if like, but you go into these other realms of reality. And I was experiencing these visions very clearly of places I was going to, beings, people that were there. I was making quite copious notes about what I was seeing. Now, going back to a guy I mentioned earlier on, Aleister Crowley, he'd worked with the Enochian system in the 1910s, and called the Vision of the Voice, which was his experiences of working with Enochian. And what he experienced was completely different to what I was experiencing. So you think, oh, it's this famous guy seeing this stuff, and I'm seeing different things, and I'm doing something wrong. But this was the early days of the internet, just starting out, and there was a guy in Denmark whose name I can never remember. It's really noisy, I've forgotten his name. But he was put online, like a blog, an early version of a blog, of his experiences working with Enochian. And he was getting the same things as I was getting. The same imagery, the same visions, the same feelings. I'm like, whoa, that's really intriguing. So two kind of average guys who didn't know a lot about anything were getting the same stuff. Things were different. So it became clear these things respond to you, who you are as a person. You see and experience these things according to your own beliefs and ideas. So who would have contrary experiences of the same thing, but their sense of who they are and their understanding of things definitely influences what you experience. So it's not sort of set in concrete. Those experiences will alter and change depending on who you are as a person. And that, to me, was absolutely fascinating as well. But the side of all of this was my sense of picking up on places and locations was getting stronger and stronger through doing things with this ritual work. There's this attunement, if you like. So there is a strong parallel between the paranormal and the occult stuff I've done over the years. But my focus is more occult based today because it's now my profession, if you like. But the paranormal has always been in it as well. So
just to clarify for people listening who may not know, for a start, it's not just a case. Don't think that you can pick up a grimoire or a book and start doing a ritual straight off the bat. It doesn't work like that. It takes an awful long time to prepare and to read through the ritual. You have to read through it. You have to learn it. You have to absorb it. These rituals. It's something which, in a way, with the ritual itself, with a lot of grimoires, they're set out. The closest analogy I can use is a QWERTY keyboard. A lot of times, when QWERTY decided to lay out a keyboard in such a manner as we have nowadays, it's really to try and slow people up in the typing, because in typing pools they were going far too quickly with the keyboard that they had. So QWERTY came up with a keyboard which would hopefully slow them up somewhat. It's the same with rituals. They're written in such a manner that they slow the practitioner up. They make the practitioner think and absorb the ritual. These rituals are not something that you can just pick up and do. So don't think it's anything like that. To do properly, you have to actually be quite learn it. Like you're going back to school, you have to learn it, absorb it, and take it in. Do you think that there's a part of this which is psychosomatic from the point of view of feeling? I understand the guy in Denmark having the same. That is interesting. That is very, very interesting. The same experience and thoughts and sight. But do you think there's a certain amount of psychosomatic intention there? You're doing this. You're doing something which is let's find naughty. Yeah, it's like kind of you're looking in a naughty book. You're looking in it's one of these things which is fundamentally not mainstream. It's fundamentally not mainstream. It's something which is on the peripheries of literature, very hard to get a lot of times, you're invoking. You're trying to invoke a state of being, or you're trying to invoke an entity, even Enochian. With Enochian and John Dee, he was fascinated with the idea of talking to angels. That's where Enochian and he wrote a very famous book. John Dee did a pamphlet, wasn't it? I think actually. Yeah, he was fascinated with getting in contact with angels. That's the thing. I mean, can we segregate? Is it possible in doing this with Enochian law to sort of segregate the angels from other entities? Do you
Well,
think?
there's a lot in what you've just said, and let's unpack some of it. The first thing to say is that the angels and demon definition is a medieval concept that predates a lot of our thinking, but it's certainly by no means the only way these things are seen. It's only a relatively recent idea. There's strict division between the two beings. You could ask the question of, are they actually discrete entities that exist in heaven or hell? Personally, I think not at all. We're dealing with energy beings, is the best way I can put it. That will, again, I will always emphasize this, they respond to how you work with them. Your ideas and beliefs that you bring to the table will influence what you experience. That's been absolutely my experience. And I don't think they have set identities of their own, because you can work with, say, for example, goetic magic, which is described as being working with 72 demons, quote, demons. They don't necessarily respond as demons. They don't appear sort of flaming or whatevers and big horns and roar at you or anything like that. They have certain forms they may appear in, but if you expect them to look a certain way, they'll look a certain way. If you don't have an expectation of what you expect them to look like or behave like, then they don't behave the way that you think they're going to. They don't do anything particularly. If you expect to be scared by a demon that you've summoned, it will come and scare you, because that's what you're asking it to do, effectively. It's not taking a form. But what I found particularly interesting is I work with systems as desperately far apart as Enochian and runic magic. Now, why on earth would two systems totally different to each other both produce results? They do, because whatever it is we're working with takes on a form that connects with what we're experiencing. John Dee and the Enochian system is a good example. First of all, John Dee called it angelic magic. He didn't even use the term Enochian. That came later. He was specifically trying to speak to God about how the universe worked. He was incredibly learned. He studied all the major sciences of the time and wanted to understand the fundamentals of how the universe is working. And he came to the conclusion the only way he could do it was to speak to God and the angels, which is why he started using scrying. Scrying was a common way in those days of basically looking into a crystal ball. That's where the idea became famous, or bowls of water, or mediums like that where you could see images within them. And he used a guy called Edward Kelly, who was the third medium he'd used, and got these results and started seeing. Kelly would see things in the crystal ball, and Dee would make a note of what he was seeing, and they became the diaries that he kept, collected, which were never meant to be published, by the way, only ever for Dee's personal use. But quickly, the beings that Kelly was seeing were not traditional angels or even demons. They were beings whose names had never been heard or seen before, that seemed to be responding in different ways to how a biblical angel might. It raised interesting questions. These beings were telling Dee through Kelly all sorts of things that were not of a Christian idea, but not of an evil idea. They were just different. The idea of the origins of life not being from just two people, the idea of Adam and Eve, they said that wasn't the case. They were saying things that were almost much more scientific in the broadest sense of the term than anything sort of religious. It was quite a different set of things that were coming out. And what we were given through these diaries, the collection, was how to work the quote Enochian system, although we have no record of them ever using it themselves. Now, some of their notes and records went missing, unfortunately, got destroyed at the Great Fire of London. And it's been speculated that perhaps what was lost was their records of them using this, quote, system of magic. It's not really a system, it's a kind of lots of bits and pieces coming together to form a kind of system which you can work with. But it's not systematized, shall we say. It's not a set out way of doing things. It's all a bit kind of all over the place. But again, a lot of the Goetic and Solomonic magic, which is like the angel version, those beings can be angels but respond again differently depending on what your approach is to them. They don't act in a certain set way. People often early on in working with this kind of things read that angel Frederica, for whatever better name, can produce gold for you, so they go for the ritual of summoning Frederica and the gold to appear, and surprise surprise, it doesn't appear because it doesn't work like that. it's very possible that whoever's wrote things like the Goetia, the 72 Demons of the Goetia, wrote of their experience of working with these beings based on their knowledge and background. And us, 500 years later, have very different knowledge and experiences and background, so have a different experience of them. But to your first point, it's one of those things that everyone could always say, well, you just imagined all of it, it's all in your head. Well, yeah, it probably is all in my head, but your head's a lot bigger than you realise. Your head's interconnected with the reality around you. It's almost trans-dimensional, if you like. There is that kind of level of what I'm seeing and experiencing. I play a part in it. It doesn't appear on its own, but it is there separate to me as well, because other people have had the experiences I've talked about before. Again, it's harder now because the internet's full of this stuff. I mean, you can download most of these books for free. Some of them are legal, some illegally, but you can. But back in the early days, there was very few people practicing this stuff, and they would perhaps meet up and talk about what they experienced and notice the similarity, even though they're both, you do a ritual at the same time, but separately, come back and compare notes and think, actually, yeah, I got that as well. I had that same kind of feeling too. There's a continuity.
Yeah.
That's
I mean, I'm of the same school of thought when it comes to these entities. I think, kind of to pigeonhole them into convenient, demonic, angelic. I think in a way, you see, I'm a big believer that a lot of what we're experiencing is connected. Is all connected. It comes from a single origin. And I think that we kind of like dip into this energy, this all-pervasive kind of like river, this flow of energy. We dip into it, we dip out of it. And I've said before that, we have our brains, but we have the consciousness, and our consciousness is external to us. And I think we dip into that and we share this consciousness. And I think with entities, a lot of times, I would not be at all surprised if you contact using occult means alien entities, literally alien entities. I would not be at all surprised, even though you're going through a very ancient old ritual. I think what could come through could be construed as being an alien entity, honestly.
Exactly that, except I am very much in the camp of what's called the ultra-terrestrials. That these are beings that aren't from other universes, galaxies, planets. They are here with us, but just a different here. That they can cross into this here instead and manifest. I mean, it's a whole other topic really, but yeah, my personal thinking is those beings who work with ritual magic, the ghosts that we encounter, the aliens that we encounter, are all the same thing. They come from the same source of whatever that source is. They're from the same thing. I mean, there's a very good TV show that was based on the Ray Bradbury novel back in the 1980s called The Martian Chronicles, which I saw as a kid. And there was something in that really caught my attention and made me start thinking about this. There's a scene in which there's a priest who's setting up the first church of Mars, literally the first Christian church on Mars. And he's in the chapel, and it's late one night, and you can hear a movement in the back of the chapel in the sort of semi-darkness behind. He looks back, and a man steps forward, and it's Jesus, completely with holes in his hands and the crown of thorns bleeding on his forehead. And the Jesus being says to him, "You are doing this to me. Please stop doing it. It hurts." And the priest is like, I mean, I'm paraphrasing, obviously, but the priest is like, "What do you mean?" The Martians themselves, their identity is from the people who see them. So because he was a Christian priest, he saw a Martian, but he appeared to be Jesus. And because he was manifesting as Jesus, he was bloody painful. He had holes in his hands and feet and bleeding from his forehead. And that really struck me, is that actually explains why people see different things. Because whatever it is manifesting from us.
Because it's a single origin. We are almost like the I've often said to people that, look, like you say, it's along the same lines. I could very well go out and see a ghost or hear a ghost, and somebody standing by the side of me would see and interpret the same event completely different,
Absolutely.
because it manifests itself in such a way that it makes itself acceptable to the viewer.
Yes, exactly. It's one.
So it kind of, if you go out looking for aliens and UFOs, undoubtedly you will see a lights in the sky, and you will see a alien entity. If there is, if you see an alien entity, you will see an alien entity. You will see like the and a lot of it is very absurd. When it appears to people, it's in a very absurd manner. They might be dressed as a clown, which has happened
Yeah, yeah.
in Essex. They may be dressed in such a manner that they look like the Flatwoods monster with a aura around them. And once again, you get this smell with the entities. You get like this stench of sulfur and rotten eggs, and almost like vinegary smell as well. You get a smell with these aliens, which parallels very closely to normal paranormal ghost entities, where people go and go, yeah, I've got I saw a ghost. Yeah, I did see it, and tapping. I heard a lot of tapping on the window. Really absurd, strange things which happen, which is they almost present themselves in a manner which, if you were to recount your experience, no one's going to believe you, because they've shown you in such a manner that it is absurd.
Yeah.
But there is traits, as you say, there's traits with all of this which bleed over into one another. The tapping, that is people like tapping on a window, tapping on a door. Don't answer the door. When you hear tapping, and usually it will tap 3 times. Knock, knock, knock. Pause. Knock, knock, knock. Always in 3. It'll always be in 3. And then you get the other side of things with Men in Black. So you get the paranormal side. Don't ask a evil entity in your home. Don't ask them in. If you ask them in, you're asking for trouble. Don't ask them in. So you get Men in Black. They turn up at your door in godforsaken hour, saying that I would like to talk to you about a sighting you had. The one thing is, they ask for permission to enter. Same type of thing, isn't it? It's a strange. I do absolutely 100% agree with you, and I do think, Andy, that you completely right. There is, and we've got to start thinking a little less, because at the moment, with a lot of the groups, and a lot of the social media is fractured, and it's fractured into very close, cliquey groups, and these groups, because they're so introvert and into whatever subject they want to believe in, Bigfoot, they won't believe it. They won't comprehend the idea of Dogman. Dogman groups won't comprehend the idea of Bigfoot. That you'll get paranormal groups that won't even entertain. Well, they pretty much hate everyone, but they won't entertain the idea of aliens. Alien groups, they're all kind of like fractured. But I believe that we should embrace all of these entities and all of these experiences as a whole. Do you think that's the right way of thinking?
I agree. It's one of those things of which we are seeing this more and more, the fracturing of groups. I mean, there are psychological reasons behind that, which we haven't got time to go into now, but it's a feature that's been happening since the last sort of 5 years or so, especially. I mean, Bigfoot's a good example, actually, and the vitriol hatred between the 2 Bigfoot camps. You had Ron Moorhead on recently, who was part of these interdimensional Bigfoot idea that they're not fully normal cryptid creatures. There's more going on, and I tend to lean that way myself. But then you get the ordinary flesh and bone Bigfoot believers, and they hate each other. But we're even discussing the alternative possibilities, that because the flesh and blood and Bigfooters want to be seen as scientific and rational and quote normal, when they see the interdimensional Bigfooters as completely crazy loon balls. But yet, much of the evidence leans that way for something to be missing for so long, to be able to evade any identity or capture. Something more to be some kind of flesh and blood creature that we should be able to have captured by now. There's something more going on. So I think it leans that way as well. I think it falls in the same category as what we're talking about now. But I know from a friend of mine in America, the vitriol and hatred between the two groups is phenomenal. It really is. When you consider the average normally out there thinks we're all bloody lunatics anyway. So, you know, I wouldn't differentiate between us as being crazy. It's funny how it's gone that way.
Do you think that's more a nature of how they're perceiving them? Because it's like some people are more tuned into the paranormal than the physical, and some are more tuned into the physical than paranormal. It's quite possible, like you say, they're seeing the same thing, but the people that aren't tuned in, like paranormally, aren't seeing the paranormal aspects of the creatures, rather than, you know, sort of like, and that's where the problem's coming from. So that's why they can't entertain the other theory, because like you say, if you're expecting to perceive, not expecting to, I don't even know if it's expecting to perceive something, but if you're only able to perceive something on a certain set of levels, if I turned around and said, well, actually, there's a great glowing aura around it and you can't see it, you're just going to be like, what the hell? Whereas like you're seeing the aura, but you can't see the physical thing because you're seeing the aura around it going, it can't possibly be completely physical because I'm also seeing metaphysical. And it's like, so some of it is like a perception filter on what we can and can't perceive as well. Because it's like when you were saying about the creatures, it's like, it is how much of what we're seeing of them is deliberate and how much of it is them being forced into a form. Yes. And like you say, is it painful for them? Which is why the demonic tends to have like more negative effects, because it's in pain, because of the way we're making it manifest in this world, possibly as well.
Well, exactly. If you're supposed to be a flaming beast and your skin's on fire coming out of you, it's really painful. You know, you're making it.
Would have been nice.
Exactly that. I mean, as I said, those creatures will present themselves in the ways in which adhere to what your belief system is. And if you are out there looking for a flesh and blood Bigfoot, then you see a flesh and blood Bigfoot, and that's it. There's your proof, scientific evidence. It's a physical being. And so the guy next to said, well, hang on, he was glowing. You know, it's like, oh, I didn't see him glowing. He wasn't glowing. And there's a thing called the trickster element, a lot of this sort of stuff. These things are kind of toying and playing with us. I'm not convinced of that. I think, again, it's because of the amorphous nature of the things themselves. They only partly form them because they can only pick up so much of us. But I think the key for me is they have no identity of their own. A common element, a lot of sightings I've noticed, particularly sort of out in the wild, if you like, is these things often start as a ball of light or pinpoint of light. Some Andy Collins, is writer I know quite well, mentioned many years ago, one of his books, this idea these balls of light as being the first sign of manifestation. What were the photographs he and Graham Fitz were taking back in the 80s? They were like little dark patches on the footage, on photographs, and then people would see things, would seem to be an occurrence that somehow like a light or dark energy ball is the first manifestation, and then it becomes something else. So later on, as if their pure form of these things is as an energy. But I think it's important to get them across the point they have no identity. They don't have a form of their own that there would be if you weren't observing them. They are just totally mimicking what's being fed to them. You know what I mean? So it is purely it's like a ball of clay. So you make it into something.
Yeah, the only issue I have with this is where you have experiences that you are not expecting. Like we had Daryl Denton on last week? Time's a bit screwy at the moment. And he had literally no idea that there was Bigfoots anywhere near him, didn't know anything about them. Grandfather never said anything until he was, I don't know how old he was, but he was old enough to, you know, to be off on his own hunting with his mates. And it's like, and he literally didn't know what he was seeing. And it's like, so how can the issue I have with they manifest the way you expect them is if you don't expect anything because you don't know about it and they still manifest to you, are they just borrowing someone else's expectations and manifesting to you in that way? Or is there some element in your mind that they've picking up on that you're completely unaware of.
Well, as a psychotherapist, I would say there is an element of the subconscious playing a part, and it's the images being drawn from your subconscious. And if we talk about is the collective unconscious is a reality, which as a Jungian therapist, I think it is, those images exist deep within us anyway. So there is a level they can be picked up on. But are you saying the guy had no idea about Bigfoot before he saw what he saw?
Yeah, I think he said, didn't he, that because he was so shocked. He literally jumped 23 foot out of a tree because he didn't know what he literally didn't know what he was seeing, wasn't expecting it, hadn't gone looking, he was hunting.
Well, I would say it's in the American, it's particularly collective psyche of the Bigfoot phenomenon, because it goes back to long before we arrived over there. So it's in their collective psyche anyway, the concept of Bigfoot. Because Bigfoot is a fascinating one for me, because it only really occurs in America. We have the Sasquatch in the Himalayas and in Russia, so there's possibly a link there. But there's very little record of these sort of beings wandering around Europe, for example, going back centuries, even when there were massive areas that were unoccupied, like the Black Forest, for example. There's no real stories of Bigfoot there. It's very much an American phenomenon. So it's something deep in the, pre-Columbian American society, the Native Americans, is something deep within them that I think is bleeding into our modern thinking as well. That's why I find Bigfoot itself as a phenomena fascinating rather than the creature, because it seems to be so strongly located there. You get cases around the world, obviously you do, but the number, the sheer volume of sightings are in North America, far more than anywhere else in the world, apart from the Yeti idea.
They're more frequent. I think they're more frequent, definitely, in North America. Just quickly to go back, I think a lot of it. There is one group which is studying in the most scientific manner they possibly can, which is a difficult thing to do when you're dealing with something which is doesn't want to be seen, and leaves footprints, and then the footprints just vanish. The footprints are there, but then the entity vanishes. The Bigfoot vanishes. It seems to go nowhere further. The footprints just stop. And when you're dealing with something like that, it's very strange. The light anomalies that happen, very much so. People often see UFOs, and where they see a UFO, there is very often a sighting of a Bigfoot. Being witnessed quite a few times, that has. We also have to remember that in every genre of paranormal and supernatural, there's an awful lot, especially people that have dedicated their lives to this. They kind of like grow. They learn to grow a barrier around themselves, and they're very suspicious naturally, because they've been berated. They've been chastised, even, so to some part, over what they believe. So you get a lot of the scientific based researchers of Bigfoot who do take casts of prints, who do try and lay out a whole menagerie of trail cams, who do take samples, DNA samples, who do a lot of study work. Then you get the other camp, which are perhaps a little bit more on the side of, well, they are beamed down by UFOs, and they disappear because they're interdimensional entities. So when you're trying to, from the point of view of researchers who are more scientific based, it nullifies every time that it's mentioned that they're interdimensional and they just disappear. It's something that they can't categorize. It's something they can't measure. So they end up rebuking it totally.
Yeah.
And that blinkers to a certain extent.
Yeah.
So that's the reason why these two camps kind of they kind of like have friction between them. And I'm afraid to say that with Bigfoot, it's a very old entity. We have had it in Europe. We have had it in nearly every country of the world, I must admit. Years ago, and we've got it now on churches. You go into quite a few churches in England, and you'll see a big, hairy man holding a club called a woodwose. That could be very much construed as being a Bigfoot, a large, hairy man holding a club, which, funny enough, they often hear wood knocks. Is it because they have a club? Who knows? But and they were often put onto churches because the people going to church back in the day were very much in the belief of forest creatures, entities, spirits, demigods, even. So they were very much believing in that. And so in a way, what they did, they put these woodwoes, dragon type entities on the arches of the church to protect the church, because they were protectors. On fonts where babies were christened, they would have woodwoes with a club, because it was a protection. It was like saying, okay, look, we understand you believe in these entities, and to put your mind at rest, we're going to have them on a font. We're going to have them above the church, so nothing will harm you in here. Nothing will harm you. It's kind of a bit of a cop out, but it's just sort of getting people in and getting them so that they're reassured, because they were very much, it was a transitional time. But yeah, I think we've had these entities now. Whether Bigfoot is I think the term Bigfoot, and I think the Bigfoot that we know and love, I think it's quite a modern thing, and I think it was made famous. Obviously, I don't want to touch too much on it at the moment, but the Patterson Gimlin film was the one which made it very famous. That's what kind of made it a household name. But it was around prior to that, and it was in many countries, this entity, hairy man, woodwose, and it was part of culture years ago, written about in some parchments, some leaflets, pamphlets of old, very much depicted on wood carvings and stuff like that. So yeah, we have had that, in and around us. We don't often get Bigfoot so much in this country. A lot of people say we can't because what is it going to feed on? It's too big a creature. We are an island, relatively small. We don't have the forest. I think the whole of England is only about 5% forest or 4% forests, which isn't a lot. And yet people do see them still. So I think it's partly because, if you want my honest opinion, I think it's in the same realm, these Bigfoot entities, in the same realm as what as Andean was mentioning earlier. I think they are a energetic energy that presents itself from the same well, the same pool of energy which we're tapping into. And maybe it's a case that someone will see a Bigfoot and yet I will see a Dogman, because that's what I'm looking for.
That would make sense.
Could be. Anyway, I'll stop ranting. What do you reckon, Natalie? What do you think to Bigfoot being a actual thing in this country?
Well, I've seen things in the woods around here, but I don't know if I'd call it a Bigfoot or not. But a lot of the manifestations of it are similar. But the thing I saw didn't look like a Bigfoot. But it sort of did at the same time. So
Spill the
I mean,
beans. What did it look
I
like?
just
What
call
did
him
it look like?
Stickman. I call him Stickman. I don't know what it is. But the other thing that I seen in the woods also wasn't that tall. So it's quite possible the UK ones are smaller anyway. Because there's smaller woods, small, But I don't know. I'm still on the fence about it
But
as an actual Bigfoot.
we have a much stronger tradition, of course, of the fairy folk, the fae, which would be smaller beings, we woodland spirits and sprites. That's much more what our history has recorded. One of the first books I wrote was called The Wicked Shall Decay, which you use for the title of the talk, of course, which was a collection of genuine spells and incantations that I got from my quite large collection of books from the Folklore Society, mainly from the Victorian times up to the 1930s, when sort of folklore interest exploded. People had sort of middle class had time to pursue interest, and folklore gathering of stories and tales was very popular. And as I say, in these collections of books were genuine examples of spells and incantations, but also I came across lots of first-hand experiences that these writers had recorded of village folk seeing phenomena, seeing creatures, seeing small beings, often coming from hills or underground, that would manifest and appear from nowhere, that would act very strange and then disappear again. And they're often described as being smaller than human size, sort of gnome-like, dwarf-like. So in our history of strange sightings, phenomena, it tends to go more on that route of stuff that would, creatures that emerge from the underground or would appear from nowhere. There was a couple of stories that I read that particularly really stuck with me, that were really quite strange. An occasion where in Scotland, a group of people saw two, what they thought were children who had grey skin, who somehow managed, according to the report, teleport a cow off a cliff down to the beach and then disappeared. But they observed the cow go from the cliff to the beach, and these grey-skinned children seem to have caused it. Which, and I say, a number of people are supposed to have seen this phenomenon. It's again 1800s in Scotland. Another occasion when sailors were out, trawlers were out, in from Scotland this was, there's a small ship with a few crew, and they said at one point this being landed on the top of the mast. So it was about 4 or 5 foot tall, black with red glowing eyes, and stood there for about a day before disappearing. And that sounds for all the world like the Mothman. But this is northern Scotland in the 1800s. But they all described seeing this and being terrified of it, and I'm initially unable to fish, but after a few hours it says, well, just carry on fishing because we need the fishing. But this thing was standing on top of the ship. I mean, these are just random examples of some of the weirdness people were recording and experiencing. And whether that's to do with albatross belief, I don't know. Whether these other beings have always been around us, and in Victorian and earlier times we saw them come from the ground, whereas now they see grey short aliens coming from spaceships. In more modern times, our understanding of where these things could be coming from has been shaped by culture and history, so they start appearing again differently, but still a phenomenon. But certainly in Victorian times especially, the sighting of, in earlier, say, these small fairy-like beings, elves like as well, was the common cryptid that was seen in the UK, was small fairy-like creatures who appeared to come from hillsides or down the ground. Particularly in Ireland, were very common, those kind of underground beings being seen and appearing. The banshees with the strange noises they made. They all fit that kind of paradigm, if you like, of paranormal that's fitted with our sort of history. Whereas, as I said before, the American native culture, particularly the tall, big, hairy man was much more common. Again, as Phil's saying, doesn't mean we didn't over here at all. Of course, that's quite possible we all have. But they fit into that kind of fairy folk form, if you like.
You're talking about the teleporting cow. I know it's going to sound weird. I was talking to Chris Meachin the other day, and he's got an interest in the cattle mutilations. Oh. And it's like when you were saying about the teleporting cow, I was thinking in a lot of folklore, the cows are affected. And if you think about it, and it's like, I'm thinking, what is it about these poor cows that seem to be attracting? And then is the cattle mutilations actually linked to that kind of?
Well, the cows themselves obviously were very important. They're the source of milk and food to be eaten. So you want to look after your cows. A lot of the spells I recorded in the Wicked Short, the more interesting spells, the more kind of malicious ones trying to cause harm to people or trying to stop things happening. But most of the spells are about looking after the crops, looking after the farm, and finding one's love. So there are lots of spells about production of cow milk and better cow food. So cow was important. So, they are going to be more aware of protecting their cows than anything else because it was the main source of food and milk, as I say. So it was a valuable animal. So any sort of threat to that was taken more seriously than any other animal, really. So
yeah, it just seems to be that, like you say, through folklore, a lot of these creatures do seem to have malicious intent towards our cow. And it's still continuing now. Like, say, if you think about the cattle mutilations thing in the UFO, and if you could say that is similar beings, like, across the board, they are still interfering with the cows. And it's like, it's just interesting that the poor cows, because you don't get it so much. Like, if you think about it, it's like you don't get you get more sort of stopping your milk from turning in the, and like you say, the cow spells, but you tend not to get so many. Well, I'm extrapolating here. I'm assuming that there are, or I haven't seen as many spells based upon sort of getting, sheep and pigs.
Exactly. It does
seem to be focused on cows.
Yeah. The ones that ended up protecting was the cows. Often you think back to cows are more left out in the big field by themselves. Sheep for the wool was useful, but cows, they produce a lot of meat in one cow, and of course milk production is vitally important. So they played a big role. But I also find the mutilation thing is an interesting one because again, that's much more of an American phenomenon.
Yeah,
it's important. Cows in India, for example, I mean, it's not. Often people think they worship cows. They don't. Cows not seen as sacred. It's seen as an essential being, so it's looked after with reverence. But you don't get stories of cow mutilations from India. It is very much an American phenomenon. Again, there's something in that. I think there is something in the fact that these things seem to be more located in one part of the world than another. If you talk about a phenomenon that was universal, that all experience it, we all have these phenomena, but certain phenomena seem to be more focused in particular parts of the world. I mean, to say, we mentioned before, the alliance between the sort of Sasquatch and the Yeti, for example. Again, that Yeti is in a very specific part of Russia as well. You don't tend to find them wandering to the European part of Russia. They tend to be seen out in the mountains, in the sort of Siberia and that kind of part, the further apart, the long way from civilization, Himalayas, that kind of area. It's interesting there. These two closely aligned beings are in fairly specific parts of the world. Now, modern times, obviously, maybe different before. I always find those examples of phenomena that are geolocated quite fascinating. Why is it they are seen more in that part of the world than this part of the world, for example? I find that an interesting question. It doesn't necessarily have an answer.
Yeah, because we were talking the other week with Mary, who's in the Netherlands, and she was saying, like, again, they tend not to have cryptids there, but they have trolls.
Yeah.
And it is quite a specific, it's a specific type of folklore that they have, and it's like, it was quite an interesting thought, because she was like, I wish we had more Bigfoots, because that'd be far more interesting.
I mean, a very common phenomenon in the Balkan countries, particularly a lot of things like trolls and the kobolds, underground dwelling creatures. They are quite common in the Balkan part, the Balkans, the Eastern Europe, Southeast European. So again, it's more geolocated as well. But you get a lot of things called the Tommyknockers. You get predominantly in Wales, particularly underground knockings in Wales. Again, you can argue there's lots of mines in Wales, of course, with the coal extraction, and then in Cornwall with the tin extraction. So a lot of mining areas, you get the Tommyknockers, but they're not so common up north with a lot of northern mining sites as well. So again, these are kind of geolocated. It's fascinating.
Robert Bigelow, who took over and brought in his own teams to study Skinwalker Ranch, he had very, very odd things that happened. A lot of entities were seen from the point of view of Bigfoots, Dogman entities. He even had like a UFO. His wife witnessed a UFO landing, then the alien getting out, and it was in the yard. so the front yard, and it landed. The UFO alien got out, the UFO, and if I remember rightly, what I read, it sat on a desk, pulled up a chair, and sat at a desk looking at the house. I mean, absurd. And there was a lot of cattle mutilations that happened on that. There was a lot of like Andy said, there was a lot of light anomalies before these things appeared. Robert Bigelow, in an interview by not Jeremy Corbell, the other one that was with him. Keep forgetting the old guy's name. He's a really nice guy. Jeremy Corbell and
George Norrie.
Who?
Is it George Norrie?
Yes, George.
Coast to Coast.
Yeah. Yeah, they do a really cool podcast. And he interviewed him, and Robert Bigelow just turned around, and he's an intelligent guy. He's a multimillionaire. He's, you know, sort of, he builds planes, for goodness sake. And he said it just got too weird, and there was no rhyme or reason to it, and it was something which we knew we couldn't get to the end of it. We couldn't get any factual evidence of anything, but it did happen. But he was most worried about the hitchhiker effect, taking things home with him. That's what he was worried about. Do you think that with your experiences, you have ever had a hitchhiker effect with you, Andy?
No. Absolutely never. No. I find it interesting that the people feel they do that. If something is based at a location, why would it leave? You know, that's where it exists. That's where its being is. Why would it follow someone else home? Now, whether there's something else manifesting that may appear to have the same response as whatever they've experienced before, that is possible. But when you imagine the kind of stuff I do with occult ritual work, you know what? If anything came home with me, I'd say, well, you join the club, you join the crowd. There's other things already here. You might find that uncomfortable because they might not like you being here. But no, I've never experienced it myself, and I don't know anyone directly who has. I mean, people may have done, I don't know. But my own experience that hasn't really occurred very often, because if you're dealing with something that's empowered, going back to the beginning, by the area it's in, be it the stone building or the EM field, as I prefer to say, it's allowed to stay there because it belongs there. It's located there. It's like, why would you go and sort of just drift off? You've got a perfectly nice house, go live in somebody else's house, or you've got your own home that you know well and comfortable with. To me, it seems unlikely. So it's not possible, obviously. I don't know. But going back to your saying about the Skinwalker Ranch, I don't know if you've been following the new series with the new owners, Brandon Fugel, and the TV series they've been producing, because some of the stuff coming out of that is very much leaning towards the notion of some kind of interdimensional effects occurring. This whole appears to be some kind of energy bubble that surrounds the farm itself, or the ranch. And if you pass through the perceived barrier, that's when things go really strange as you go through the barrier from within to without it. So it's suggesting some kind of, again, a massive EM field surrounding the site that is very strong and causing all sorts of very strange anomalies that, again, is inexplicable, that doesn't add up to particular patterns, as you were saying before. All sorts of just general strange, high strangeness occurring in the area. So if you've not been following the show, it's worth watching. There's a lot of flan and waffle that goes on in, unfortunately, but when they do their proper experiments, the results are fascinating.
Yeah. No, for sure. It's I don't know. It's just it's. Do you remember the Sandown Clown in the Isle of Wight that happened?
No.
It was witnessed by a couple of boys. And the Sandown Clown in the Isle of Wight, their boys were just playing, and there was a bit marshland where they were, and this clown appeared. It looked like a clown. It had like two antennas sticking up, and it had very bright clothing on. All different colour. The trousers were bright, let's say a pink. The top was a bright yellow. His eyes were very strange. and it then beckoned the boys over to a little cabin. And when they went in the cabin, if I remember rightly, it started to it wanted to make them either like its little lunch with biscuits.
Oh,
A
intriguing.
very, very odd thing. Look it up. Sandown Clown.
Yeah.
Absurd. But these boys, they afterwards, the boys they went to tell the parents. The police were then called. They went looking for this thing because they thought it was some pervert bloke. Um, and evidently the boy said he did have he got into a UFO and disappeared.
Good lord.
Um,
There were cases out there before about sort of UFO sightings with what seemed like perfectly ordinary human type people coming out and offering food and sort of sitting down and chatting with people before getting back in the craft and disappearing. Have you ever seen the Missing 411 series of movies by
yeah, Politis.
the most recent one talks about a couple of examples a bit like that, where these people just offer them food and they go off. And John Keel particularly talked about some UFO encounters that were of that kind of nature. That was very ordinary people coming out of these extraordinary craft and acting very normally, offering food and having a chat, and then just going off into this craft that then just vanishes. So it is pretty odd, I think these things don't act in what we might consider as a conventional, rational way. And I often say the thing with rational thinking is it's fairly modern. It's kind of invented in the Age of Enlightenment in the 1600s. The rational thinking became the predominant way of doing things, where emotions and care and those kind of non-rational things pushed to the side and seen as being less relevant. It was important because of the advances of science, when things like astronomy and astrology got separated off. Astrology became the province of the planets. So the Enlightenment did a lot of good in that respect of advancing science, but we threw out such important other ways of being and thinking and seeing things that matter to us, which is why things like religion still have a hold, because we're looking, or even spirituality, we're looking for that non-kind of concrete, dull, day-to-day mundane world of science, of matter, of normalness. We want something more than that, and it's something that's in us, this kind of need to have a connection, because it's real. There is stuff out there that we are almost ignoring now as treating as if it's just the realms of the crazy, whereas not that long ago it was seen part and parcel of daily life, ordinary life, that you wouldn't sort of blink an eye at being concerned by it. It's part of who we were as people until, say, 1600s. We all got thrown to one side.
I think you're right. I don't think we construe these entities a lot of times as being evil and being bad, especially the aliens stuff. Now, I don't particularly think that they're aliens from another universe at all. I do think it's part and parcel of what we're dealing with, what we previously spoke of. I think it's just like a well of energy that we dip into, and it manifests depending on the witness. But I think that the energy that we're dealing with isn't inherently evil.
Absolutely.
I just think it's completely devoid of empathy. It's completely devoid of it's so, pardon the pun, alien. It's devoid of any, for some reason, it's devoid of any comprehension of emotion or the human psyche at all. You take, for instance, people that have witnessed where they've been abducted, and they're lying on a table and they're being prodded and poked. Very often, the alien will look at them and say, "Why are you screaming?" Well, actually, because I'm on a table, it looks like an operating theatre, and you're prodding me, or you're putting stuff under my skin, or you're trying to extract my semen, or you're trying to sort of mess about with my ovaries, and it's not nice. That's why I'm screaming my head up. And they just cannot comprehend that emotion of fear within us. They just don't have any reasoning, Andy. They don't seem to have any reasoning at all of where this energy comes from. it's fascinated with us. I'm not sure who's more fascinated, whether we are or whether it is with us.
Well, reasoning, of course, it's our reasoning. They don't have our reasoning, so far they don't have reasoning. They have their own reasoning. I mean, you can give us an example that we would take animals. We're better at it now, but we would take animals and just cut them apart, see how they work, to operate on them, to experiment on them. We wouldn't give a second thought. Now, I'm not saying that they're doing that to us, as I don't think, I know some people would argue that's what's going on. I don't think that's the case. But, we have our own sense of right or wrong, which is like our westernized 21st century concept of what's right or wrong, what's okay, not okay. But even our own history has shown that those ideas have changed radically over the centuries. I mean, the whole concept of cannibalism, it's horrendous to us, either killing another human and eating them. But other cultures, that's part and parcel. It's an honor to eat your dead relative because you're preserving their spirit, their energy, by absorbing and eating them. For us, that's horrendous, but for them, that's perfectly normal. So those ideas, our sense of right or wrong, of good and evil, are very much culturally and historically based in terms of which the paradigm. I mean, a good example of things like slavery, for example. I mean, we believe that slavery is not a good thing at all, but the Bible had no problem with slavery. It was perfectly okay. In fact, you're told to obey your master. It's in the Bible. God's saying to do it. So we have, that's fine. Well, not to us. It's not now our modern mindset, but not that long ago, it's perfectly fine, as we know. So those sensibilities of what's right or wrong change and evolve over the centuries, so that something that might seem wrong one time is no longer seen as wrong, or has become seen as very wrong. So those things shift in time. I don't know if personally, I'm not a believer in extraterrestrial aliens coming down and doing strange things to people, abducting them, and that kind of experimentation. One of the things I looked into a lot when I was first trained as a psychotherapist, and actually wrote an academic paper on it, is what's called the sleep paralysis and hypnagogic dreaming. That phenomenon experience people sometimes have. What I found was quite fascinating. What people experienced in the hypnagogic state, which is where you think you're awake but you're still dreaming, and sleep paralysis, which is a normal process the body goes through when you are dreaming to stop your arms and legs flailing about if you're having a dream. It's a normal thing that happens, but sleep is a complex process of waking and falling asleep and the various phases of sleep you go through. It's not like you just fall asleep and then wake up again. Your mind and brain go through different processes when you are asleep. Excuse me. One of the phenomena that people experience is this sleep paralysis with hypnagogic dreaming, where you can't move, but you think something's happening to you. You're aware of being somewhere else, or you're aware of being in bed, but something's sitting on you or affecting you, molesting you sexually. People have recorded these experiences throughout history, and it's actually a fairly common experience, but because people find it so scary, they don't tend to talk about it. But as a therapist, I've encountered it quite a few times. And the study I did early on with this experience was quite interesting, because what people experienced in their hypnagogic state depended on their interests. If you were interested in ghosts, horror films, or anything like that, people tend to have what's called the old hag experience, where you think there's this witchcraft creature in the room with this monster being demon, whatever, sitting on his chest, etc. That's what you experienced. If you had an interest in Star Trek, Star Wars, sci-fi, UFOs, all that kind of stuff, then you tended to have a UFO experience of seeing willowy aliens around you, or like having been experimented upon, experiencing things, getting sexual organs being interfered with. But if you didn't have an interest in either of those two, you'd have a very different experience. One guy, particularly, I had as a client who had a very interesting experience, which was part of his understanding why he was experiencing what he was experiencing, was he was having these kind of nightmares, as he put it, where he would feel he was awake but couldn't move, and his kids were in his bedroom for some reason. They would literally be running around into the bed. And so on one occasion, we were so sure they were there, I actually tried to shout to my wife, "Why are the kids in the room? Get out of the room." I couldn't talk. And then it was morning, he said. It was the next morning. I said to my wife, "Do you remember last night when the kids came in the bedroom?" She said, "No, they didn't leave the room. I was asleep, but they didn't wake up." Asked the kids, said, "No, Dad, we didn't come into your room at all." But he was convinced the kids had come into his room. Now, he wasn't into UFOs or ghosts or anything like that. He was just an ordinary accountant, basically. He was a bit of a boring job. And his experience was his family were in the room. His kids had come into the room. So it seemed to be again, I've talked to lots of people who had experiences like this. A friend of ours, actually, who was very much into Egyptology in ancient Egypt, had an Egyptian bass cat set on her chest on one occasion and was talking to her. But she was very sure it was an Egyptian, like headdress and everything, on this cat. So it adhered to her interests. Again, that same kind of experience where our brains are kind of tapping into what we're interested in and then presenting the image to us as if it's a real experience. Again, I'm not saying they don't happen, because I don't know, but everyone I spoke to, there was an explanation behind what they experienced, what they had as their phenomenal experience.
Mm.
Very dry, excuse me.
Um,
Yes.
right. I had that. I had I woke up and I couldn't move my arms and my legs. Now, this is how it felt. It felt like they were made of lead. Couldn't move them. And I tried. I was awake. I know I was awake. I know I was awake. So much so I know I was awake. I tell you why. Because I heard, I lived in a bed set, and it was down Chiswick High Road. And it was in a townhouse, and I was on the top front bed set. And below me was the Chiswick High Road street. And I could hear a kerfuffle. When I woke up, I could hear a kerfuffle in the ground, but on the pavement below. There was something going on, a fight or something going on. And I heard that, didn't know what was going on. And because I couldn't move, I could move my eyes and my head slightly, and that was it. And I was in bed. In the corner by the windows, but one single window, which was a sash window, or fastened sash window, was a curl. And it was dark. The room was dark, but this dark mass of smoke was blacker than the dark. It then took form, and the form it took was, imagine a Pied Piper. And it was a bit like Plato's cave. It walked, it became upright. It was very tall. I was on the bed, but its head was up by the ceiling. It was stooped over, but this is a strange part of it. Every section of its arms, of its head, were triangles. So it's made up in the shape of triangles, everything, its legs. Now, when it walked, you remember Monty Python and John Cleese and the funny walk? When he got those extraordinarily long legs, and he'd like kind of kick one out completely, move forward, it would go down, kick one out completely at 90 degrees, and then go down. It walked along the wall in 2D. It was a shadow against the wall, just like that. And it had a skirt, like a medieval frill. There's a special name for it. I can't remember at the moment, but the men used to wear like a frill of a skirt. And I could make that out. Then it stopped at the end of the bed. Now, I was facing the wall. So if you can imagine, my bed was like here. The window was here. And the door was over here to the bed. So it's just single room. And it stopped at the end of my bed, where the wall was, and it turned, and I could see its head turn, and it came close to me. And at that point, I felt badness. Now, not evil as in sometimes in life you meet people that you just know are bad people. You just know they're bad. You get a sense. Sometimes when you go to a certain place, you get a gut feeling. Before you have it in your head, you have it in your gut. It's like kind of, this is a bad place. This is not a good place. And it wasn't that kind of evil. It was despair, Andy. It was utter. This thing emanated a feeling of utter despair, sorrow, sadness, but I didn't feel sorrow or sadness for it. It was just exuding this feeling of just all-encompassing, a blanket of despair, and it made I weed myself. I was that scared, and I wasn't 12. I was 28. I must have been at the time. I wasn't drunk. I was a drinker. In my younger years, I used to drink habitually. I had a problem with drink, but I wasn't drunk because it was school night. Yeah. In other words, I'd work next day.
Accurate.
And the job I was doing at the time, I was working in it was a BMW garage in a parts department, basically, because I always had a very good mind for numbers, better than names. I can sort of, my mind can take numbers in much better. But so I wasn't drunk. I can promise you that. But this thing then growled something, and it said something in a growl, and then it went way to the wall, and it carried on. I then just can't remember a thing after that. I can't remember a thing. But what I do remember is when I woke up in the morning, this house was shared by pretty much everyone. All right. You had all kinds of religious denominations, literally. All right. It's London. And so much so when I come home from work, going up the staircase in the townhouse, 3 flights, there would be Muslims on the staircase at certain times, especially when I was coming home from work, praying. And I'd have to sort of step around them, you know, to get into my room. It had padlocks on the outside of people's rooms because it was such a transient place. People would shift on. So the people that own the house would come up and they'd put a padlock on the door for the next, before the next person came. It was that kind of place, yeah. And so I was very careful with a few shackles I did have to my name. Very careful to keep the door locked because I never knew who was, you know, there. Woke up in the morning and the door was open. And I thought, oh, that's strange. Now get this. This is the funniest part. People probably heard this before. That know me, they've probably heard this one before. Next door to me, next room along, on the same level, was this guy who I knew quite well. Nice guy. It's only because he's a neighbour. You know, he had the next room, and we sort of, you know, used to get chatting. He was a funny guy because him and his girlfriend would constantly play this game. They would have a really good night together, quite loud, if you know what I mean. And then they would split up. They'd have a massive row, and then they would get back together, and they'd have a right good wing ding again, you know, until the next occasion. It got into a routine. I knew roughly when it was going to kick off, and I thought, oh, well, she's come round again. Here we go. It's going to be a late night, you know. Now, I didn't see him, but when I opened up the door in the morning, I thought, I'm sure I locked that. I locked it, and I saw her, and she said, oh, hello. I was like, oh, hi. I said, are you back? I said, yeah. She said that you must have had a good night yourself. I was like, what do you mean? What are you on about? What? She said, oh, that the person that left your room, I saw them go downstairs. I was like, sorry? And she said, yeah, they really snuck out. And I said, what did she look like, or he look like, whatever, you know? I just wanted to ask her what she saw. And she said, oh, it's dark, but she said, I saw someone slip out your door and go shooting down the stairs. Yeah. I was like, did you get a close look? No, she said, I didn't. I just like opened the door and yeah, just saw them shooting down the staircase. But yeah, I thought, oh, you had a good night then, Phil. I was like, no, not really. I was still standing there in my underpants, which are still wet, you know.
There's a couple of things I would like to put to you that you might find interesting. One of the studies I read while I was writing, so it's pieces of academic publishing a scientific journal, was an interesting study. It was in America. They invited anybody who'd had these kind of experiences to come along to be basically wired up to sleep monitors to see what happened in the brain when they were having experiences. And every one of them was convinced they were awake, and every one of them wasn't. The brain pattern was REM registering. Now, I'm wondering if what you experienced was a genuine person who got into your room and in a half sleeping, imaginative state saw something, and then the brain interpreted something really quite frightening from the sounds of it. Do you think that's a possibility? I mean, that's probably a more disturbing possibility. There's a real person slipped into your room. There's also a possibility that on the other side of it, that we do experience stuff in dreams that is directly related to what's happening around us. It is a real phenomenon that we draw into our dream and then project out of the dream and experience it in the world around us, even when we're awake. Because again, studies have shown that it can be up to an hour after we are actually awake, but our brain is still processing sleep state. So you're still kind of dreaming, although you are definitely awake. So as I said, one of the things the study really showed me is the complex nature of falling asleep and waking up. We think it's so straightforward and simple, but what goes on in the brain and the body during that process is complex and can often go wrong. So it gives this really possibly more uncomfortable experience that someone had broken into your room, especially if they've actually seen someone then leave. That is even more unnerving.
The thing is that got me was the feeling I got for that. Now you're quite right. It could have been someone got into my room. It could have been the dream. You know, in that state I'm in, the brain is actually projecting, like you say, it was projecting that image and
also perceiving more powerfully as well. What I'm saying there, it could be a paranormal phenomenon in your room that normal waking state you might not notice, but in that dream, almost like kind of that phase to, we do get more external energy inputs into us from what could potentially be around. That's why often people wake up and know they're see a ghost as they're waking up. But
there's one detail though. There's one detail that I didn't fully explain. Do you remember when I said that I woke up in bed? This is when I noticed a dark mass, a ball of mist, swirling mist in the corner of the room by the sash window. I heard a kerfuffle outside, and I remember that kerfuffle. I don't know what it was. I couldn't get up from bed. When I eventually got showered, changed, and I went downstairs, remember I'd work, so I had to be at work for 8:30 in the parts department, in the BMW garage it was. By Chiswick Roundabout, it's not there anymore. It's something else, but we used to call it. I think it was called MLG, Malcolm's Little Garage. I used to call it because the owner was Malcolm. Was like kind of like very typical kind of strutting around little Napoleon type. But I went down to work, you know, and you go out the back door and then walk around to the front pavement around the house, if you like. And the house sat on the high street, and the very bottom of the house, if you like, was one of many shops. Okay, so it was a shop at the bottom, and then with flats above it. And there was a guy there with a plywood panel taking it down. And I said to the shop owner, who owned the house, funny enough, Indian guy, I said, "Oh, what happened?" He said, "Oh, last night," he said, these yobbos, he said, "flipping yobbos," he said, they come past, he said, and they caused trouble. He said, "They caused trouble and broke my window." I said, "Really?" That's the one thing that I can't quite get. I heard that kerfuffle. Now, I didn't have anyone else in that room with me to share this event with.
Yeah.
So once again, it is subjective. It's something which I experienced.
Well,
and many a time that's the problem, isn't it?
Yeah, but that's it. It's not just subjective. With the door being open afterwards, that is an objective experience as part of it. So
Yeah. Yeah.
That's an interesting one. That certainly
Yeah.
those boundaries, but it could be either way. But again, the possibility is you heard the noises and the brain took us at a speed of threshold danger, then there's a danger. But again, it could be that you are tuning into a phenomenon that you wouldn't otherwise have noticed in the fully awakened state. As I say, this is one of the funny things that research has shown, how our brains, we can be awake, and our brains are still kind of asleep and dreaming and still pick up stuff, even though we think we are now fully awake. But again, the interesting thing with people with the sleep paralysis experience was that they, to a person, believe they're awake, and this machinery, the device showed REM state brain activity. They were still dreaming. But this is what happens, you see. We go from a light level of sleep into a deeper, into REM, into delta, deep sleep, and back up. Go for the REM stage several times, but it's a relatively deep state. But what happens in this experience is you suddenly jump from one to the other. So your brain is still processing and your body can't move. And often it's described as feeling heavy because your body is not able to move because the muscles aren't working. It's shut down on purpose. But what again studies have shown is the first part of the body that starts to show physical response is parts of watershed, the genitals. So the idea of being interfered with by aliens probing your backside and stuff adheres to the idea, well, that's the part of your body that begins to respond first as you come out of sleep paralysis. So that kind of almost explains that element of these experiences as well. But again, I'm not saying this is absolutely the case, as I don't know, but let's say the studies I'd read suggest a lot of this is a subjective experience based on these two phenomena that are both natural, but when they occur together can be very, very unnerving. But that doesn't mean to say it doesn't happen for real.
Yeah. I tell you what's the most unnerving part. If it was a self-projection, that feeling that I had of absolute despair and pain and suffering and just awful, I've never felt anything quite like it. That would have come from me. That's what's the really scary part.
Yeah, it's possible. I mean, if you've had, it's really at all, but unresolved issues from having drunk too much, you don't forget alcohol's a depressant, so it has a depressive effect on us anyway. We have the initial euphoric experience of having a drink, because a thing called GABA gets loose in the brain, which is really quite a pleasant experience. That's what people experience when they first have a drink. That's what it feels nice and pleasant. It quickly wears off, and you can't recreate it until you're fully sober again. And then people tend to drink more, and it has a depression, heavy feeling it creates. That's why people can get quite violent when they're drunk, because they feel depressed. And if you're continually experiencing that, I'm a therapist now, sorry about that, but if you're continually experiencing that, then that becomes a state of mind that's in the subconscious that can have an opportunity to come out again, and you experience that kind of levels. The other side, of course, could be that there is some kind of energy entity being that lives in that building that had a very, very sad life, and that's what you experienced. You picked up on that. I don't know, I'm not going to say definitively one way or the other.
Yeah.
Years of research, whenever you come to do the theory about anything, something happens that blows the theory out of the water. So I gave up particular theories and just work what we call phenomenologically, based on experience, only what we determine from the experience, regardless of theories, and see where that takes you.
Yeah. Are you okay, Andy? Are you all right just to answer a few questions from the chat?
Of course, absolutely.
You okay with that? Rox, have you got any questions you'd like to bring up, please, Roxy? Let's have a look. Oh, a minute. Okay, right. All right then. Evidently, do you know what? There's the chat is busy, but we haven't got any questions for you, I'm sorry to say. Has anyone got any questions? I'm sure I saw some questions on the chat. Am I seeing things, or what do Andy think MIBs are?
That's an interesting question, because you can ask which version. Are we talking secret government agents who come to ask questions because of a government agenda hiding things? They're not so sure of that. But really weird beings that come along and appear from nowhere to ask questions and act strangely, I've actually got a couple of friends who've had that experience in the past, where they have encountered these beings that just don't seem to behave normally. I'm trying to remember the story as accurate as I can. It was a friend of mine back in the 1990s visited a building site which they shouldn't have been on. It was a very old house that was being renovated. There were no's around the grounds, and they said this car turned up, and it was a very old-fashioned American Cadillac. And these two guys got out who were dressed in very old-fashioned black suits, white shirts and ties, and stood either side of the vehicle and just watched them. Didn't approach them, didn't say anything, didn't do anything, but just stood and watched them in the building site. And so my friend and his friend were so spooked they went out the other way, away from them. They said they just watched us. And said what really noticed was how old the car was. Now this was the early 1990s. It wasn't like a very well-known phenomenon at that point. And yet that's exactly what they described. Men in black suits in this very old-fashioned car seeming to be just pull up from nowhere and watch them in this old derelict house which was being torn down in a place that was very old. And so it was just really, really weird. No idea what they were doing there. Another friend who had a similar kind of experience of a black car that seemed to follow them around for quite a while. They'd been involved in a UFO experience. I'm not going to tell the full story because I don't remember the full story, but they'd been in a UFO experience and sighting. Again, this was actually in Essex in Southend, again, back in the 90s. And they said this car seemed to keep popping up, following them. Again, the big black car, which she said you could see was a guy in a suit or black clothes was driving. She seemed like the reflection behind. And she said for about a week, it was popping up all over the place. I don't know who it was, I don't know what they were doing, what they were following or what, but I just kept seeing the same big black car with this one person driving it after having reported this UFO sighting to the local South India. So yeah, short answer is I have no idea what they are, but I do think they exist. It is a phenomenon people are definitely experiencing. And I don't think it's like government agents trying to sort of spy because you've seen a UFO. I think there's something else that's going on there. Again, engineer John Keel talks a lot about these Men in Black experience of these not quite humans that seem to follow people and question about the UFO experiences, and these seem to fit in with that kind of phenomenon.
Yeah, do you know the phantom car thing is like quite a strange one. That's more seen more often, especially a lot of things happen in the 1970s in Russia and Czechoslovakia. This happened where phantom, I think it was Lada, was seen. This black Lada just like kind of would follow people, and then just disappear, and the car can never be tracked, and it had strange number plates as well. You know. I forget now what number plate said. It will come to me. It'll probably come to me at 2 o'clock in the morning. I'll wake up going, yes. But
yeah.
I'll have to message you then, Andy.
But that is the weird thing. Why on earth they have these old cars that seem to be a common thing with these experiences, these older vehicles? Why not be like a nice modern car? But it always is an older vehicle. I find that pretty fascinating.
It's odd. It's absolutely, sort of, in the 70s, a lot of odd stuff used to happen, didn't it? It was an era of very strange era. Yella Tadad has said, what's all of your take on the Fermi paradox? What's your take on it, Natalie?
Is that the alien?
Yeah.
If there are aliens, why isn't there any evidence?
Where is everyone? Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, where is everyone? I don't know. I tend to think that we're not living in a linear reality, and I think that's a mistake everybody makes when they're looking at this phenomenon. I think there's layers of timelines and dimensions, and the backline of consciousness that creates everything, and it's all very interwoven. So I think when you say, it's a bit like with the Bigfoot stuff, isn't it? It's like, oh, well, it's 3D. Why can't we find it? It's like, because we're not living in an actual 3D world the way we think we are. I think that's something to do with it. And also, it's like the whole, are we looking in the right places?
Yeah.
Well, because you might well be. It's like with the paranormal phenomenon. Everyone expects to see the full-bodied apparition, but when you actually get into it, it's a lot more subtle than that, or you never see the full apparition, so everyone discounts it. And it's like, but that might be how it manifests, and we just discount it because it's not what we want to see. It's like, so, you know, I'm like I say, I'm still sort of like mulling it over, but I personally think that all of these things intermesh, and like you say, they intersect and then come apart again, which is why I think some of the phenomena is only brief. So it's sort of like, or we might get sort of like small tiny wormholes going through of time, and then we see a flash of it and then it's gone again, you know. And it's like, and then we've got the layers of reality, but then we can shift states between, because you can shift your consciousness just by sitting here. So it's like, if you can shift a state of consciousness just by sitting here and sort of like, you know, tuning into different things, and if you get really good at it, I don't see why perhaps they are there, and we're just not, we're either looking for the wrong thing, and they are saying hello, we're just not listening, or I don't believe that we're the only ones in the universe, but I don't believe the universe is what we think it is either. Long story short, very convoluted with not really a very good answer at the end of it. And it's very paradoxical, but I do think that we look at reality all wrong. It's not linear.
There's an interesting an idea that's been put forward that's in cosmology and quantum physics, particularly in quantum. Basically, the idea is that we, at the moment, see ourselves as reality, space-time as fundamental. It's the base of what everything is. It just exists. Space-time is as is. That's our basis of how we see things at the moment. But a lot of thinking is now moving in a different direction with this sort of cosmology, is that what we experience in reality of space-time is an emergent property. Now, by emergent property, it's quite a strange idea, but it really is making sense. The best way to explain the emergent property is heat. We kind of think of heat as being something, yeah, an experience we have, something warm or cold, but it's actually the movement of molecules at a certain speed. Faster they're moving, the warmer things feel. So heat isn't a fundamental, it's the emergent property of something else. Now, the idea is that reality of experience is an emergent property of a base reality of existence that is about minute particles vibrating. It's sometimes called string theory, although it's not quite string theory anymore. They've diverged away from that. But that is all reality is, that it is this vibrational thing, for want of a better word, that is fundamental. But it doesn't exist. There's no time and there's no space. It's continual, ever present. Our sense of time and space come from a linear brain and operating and the way the universe appears to physically work around us. But if it is an emergent property of these more base vibrations, then it all falls apart. All our understanding of how things are supposed to work starts to disintegrate because it's not a fundamental state. It's an emergent property. So basically, it ties in what you're saying there. Now, if this is, I'm explaining it really bad, it's very complex stuff. It's taken me a while to get a brain around it, so we're reading about this a lot because it's so fascinating, because it opens up all sorts of possibilities. One of the indicators that this is our real reality is what's called quantum entanglement. Have you come across that before? Well, quantum entanglement is incredibly strange. In fact, Einstein didn't even want to believe it was real. He tried to dismiss it, calling it spooky action at a distance. Basically, what it is, if you take two molecules and they're together and you affect them in a certain way, call them spin clockwise, for example. They spin clockwise side by side together. If you then separate them out as far as you like to the other side of the universe, in theory, but certainly any distance you can imagine, and leave them, if you spin one, the other one responds in the same way. So somehow they're communicating with each other over a distance that is so too big for it to work simultaneously. It's effectively going faster than the speed of light, which you don't want to, but it's impossible. In an ordinary sense of the universe, it's impossible. So something is going on, because quantum entanglement is absolutely real. There's no doubt about it. So one of the possible reasons why it happens is because of this actual fundamental level has no space-time in it. No time, no space, no distance, nothing. So, of course, they're still together at that level because everything's together in one massive plane of existence, if you like. So it would explain things like quantum entanglement. It also explains why we have this problem with what's called the grand unification theory, which is Newtonian physics, physics of big things, and quantum physics, the physics of small things, fundamentally don't go together. They contradict each other. But if everything is at this emergent level, then of course it works, because it just depends on what level you're looking at. It doesn't have to be tied to a particular state. It's just the emergent property of reality. And it opens up all sorts of possibilities, including things like how psychic phenomena work, how ghosts work, because it's not happening in ordinary space-time, because nothing really is. It's just illusionary, as you were just saying, Natalie. And the same modern cosmology and quantum physics and quantum mechanics, you can't say the word there, can't say it, is pointing more and more in that direction. So it's absolutely fascinating. This could be the reality in which we really are living, that we can mold and shape reality around us because it's not fundamental. It's like, whoa. And when I first read this, what the hell, I don't make sense of this. And I kept to reread and trying to understand it. The more I read it, the more I thought, bloody hell, this really is quite something. If this is true, this is really going to change our understanding of reality. Because at the moment, traveling faster than the speed of light is impossible. You just can't do it. There's no mechanism in theory that make it even possible. It always requires some kind of exotic property, exotic matter, exotic energy, which is dark energy possibly exists. Dark matter we don't know about. Again, how on earth you could manipulate any of that in real time is the problem. I don't really go forward with the whole physics of it, but faster than light travel, as you see in like Star Trek, Star Wars, is impossible. Because that subspace reality that you go into in faster than light doesn't exist. There's no evidence of it whatsoever. But if it is an emergent property, then the idea of being able to warp space-time itself becomes possible completely without subspace, because it doesn't exist in the first place. You see what I'm saying? This idea that this space and time as we experience it doesn't exist. It's just how our brains experience this stuff. And I think it's absolutely fascinating. It's mind-blowing.
Yeah,
it's once you start thinking about these things, it can make you a little bit mad if you're not careful.
Yeah, absolutely. You'd be start realizing how much of what you take for granted as being absolutely real is actually illusion.
Yeah, isn't
Illusion. It's like, oh my God, what is real? That comes the question. It's not something you can answer straightforward and say what is actually fundamentally real or not. Because as I say, if this emergent property idea is true and it's looking more likely that is what we're experiencing, then it does alter dramatically how we understand. In one sense, it doesn't, because our universe still works the same way it's always worked. It's just not working where we thought it did. And the laws that we thought were absolute suddenly become less absolute.
No, it's interesting. My view, Fermi paradox, basically Arthur C. Clarke summed it up very nicely. Two possibilities, either, and I'm paraphrasing here, either we are entirely alone in the universe, or we're not entirely alone in the universe, but both are equally as scary.
Yes, absolutely. I always find it intriguing is people often do bring those two ideas together and conflate them. Is the life of the universe, has it come to Earth? There's different questions, but they're often put together as if they're the same question. I think, yeah, there's life in the universe, definitely. Whether it has the capacity to travel to us, of course, is the other problem. And I don't think what we experience as UFOs is from other planets. I think it's other realities of our own around us, as you've been saying all along. That's how I see these things. I don't believe nuts and bolts aircraft, spaceships coming from other planets, landing, going, hello.
No,
I think
I don't. No, I definitely don't. I don't particularly believe that it comes from another planet. I don't think they do. Particularly emergent universe theory, yeah, I've dug into that. Once again, exceedingly hard study to quantify because of the very nature of it. It's emergent. It's just reality is a series of emergent realities. It's like kind of a quantum entanglement. Yes, is a thing. It is a thing. There was a very interesting study done where they used photons and they fired them down a fiber optic cable, and they hit one photon hit a prism, and the prism was, they had no idea which direction it would go in because it was going to hit a prism, so no idea. And the other opposed opposite photon traveling down another fiber optic cable coming from the same place but just split off, so same origin just split off, reacted, didn't hit a prism but reacted in the same direction as the one that hit a prism and bumped left or bumped right. The other one, identical, went and turned the same direction. It is a thing. It is. They don't fully understand it. Everyone's heard of the double slit experiment, and that's basically what we're talking about. It's a wave. It's a wave particle. Once we witness it, I believe.
State depending on who's observing it.
That's it.
Really nonsense when you think about it, but that seems what happens.
Yeah. Which once again, and I think it kind of there's. I keep getting. Do you keep getting a feeling, Andy, that we're close, but we're just missing that vital key? We're missing that little. We're close. We're close. Even with the. It appears. It manifests if witnessed.
Yeah.
It's a wave. It's a waveform, and if it's witnessed. Otherwise, it's a straight light.
Yeah,
it's part and parcel. It's there. It's almost it's incredibly frustrating because I'm sure we're really close to sort of finding out what this thing is. This bloody thing is, But it'll take a better mind than mine to finally figure it out, I think. But yeah. Does Andy think Bigfoot being so remote in Russia has anything to do with the fact that the Russians have taken Bigfoot more seriously and look for them, hence driving them deep? Oh, I see.
I'll be honest, answer I wouldn't know. To be perfectly honest with you, I know the Russians had a much bigger program of examining phenomena, in the Soviet Union era, of examining paranormal phenomena than we ever realised. I mean, a lot of their files became, for that short period of time when Russia was our friend and was okay under Yeltsin, they were given access to these kind of files. And the amount of files the Russians have been keeping on all sorts of paranormal phenomena was enormous, a huge collection of them, which, of course, was then cut off as soon as things changed and Putin became in power. But yeah, it's quite possible they've done more, probably, than the West have actually done in terms of government level serious investigation. We all know about people like Nick Pope and UFO investigations, missile defense over here, but how much of his stuff is real, how much the stories, I don't know. There are questions about what he said in the past, but I do think Russia took it a lot more seriously than we did, possibly because they're quite paranoid, so they would want to know more.
Yeah. No, for sure. Yeah, no, for sure. They really did. I believe you're completely right on that. Definitely. I'm also not too sure on the frequency thing. I think it's more velocity. I think with a lot of things that we see, we can't photograph because they're blurry. When you find hunters, they shoot a Bigfoot, but the bullet doesn't seem to draw blood or seem to bother the creature at all. I think that is part of its velocity. Perhaps it's traveling at a certain frame rate, a faster frame rate, even 36 frames per second to our 35 frames per second.
Yeah.
And that would be enough because obviously, a bullet will travel at a finite speed, always. So perhaps the entity is traveling at a different velocity, or maybe the inertia of the planet is pulling it into our realm temporarily.
Also worth knowing, of course, when it comes to vision and sight, how narrow in the spectrum we can actually see. There's a vast range.
Yeah, that's another problem. I tell you what, do you find that we're very inadequate as animals?
I think we're discovering the limitations.
Our eyesight is crap at night. Our eyesight normally is pretty rubbish. Our hearing's pretty rubbish. we kind of like suffer an awful lot with gravity. You'd think by now we'd be used to gravity and we wouldn't suffer quite so much. But as soon as you get to, I mean, I know I look young, but I'm actually 59 this year. You know, I'm 60 this year in December 7th. I only accept presents if they're wrapped. So, you know, it's like kind of, you know, with gravity, it's you know, you'd think by now that from a physiological point of view, we wouldn't have the problems with our hips anymore or our knees going or.
It would be very nice. I must admit, my knees are terrible and played rugby when I was younger. So.
It would. But no, it seems to be that we're kind of, you know, have a problem still. Ready Steady Retro, thank you very much for the questions. What does Andy think of your moments passing in the intimate dimensional time?
Is there a story?
What does Andy think of? Oh, so yeah, basically interdimensional time. What do you think to that? Do you think it's
Well, one of the things that we often don't realise is we don't have internal time consciousness. Passage of time is a subjective experience for all of us. We have a watch time as it goes by, but depending on what you're doing and engaged in, time will flow very differently. The classic example, you're in a cinema watching a 3-hour movie that's boring the hell out of you. It will drag on for days, but if you're really enjoying it, then it flies by. I mean, I love Lord of the Rings, and when I took my wife to see Fellowship of the Rings when it first came out, she was bored to tears, but it wasn't her thing at all. But I absolutely loved it, and it just flew by with her. She wanted to slit her wrist and get out of there. So it is very much our experience of time is subjective, but the fundamental nature of time is subjective. You know, there's no cosmic clock ticking away out there regulating time, and we know from various experiments that depending on how fast you're moving, time will dissipate. And you know, a jet fighter high up in the atmosphere going at full speed, it can have a chronometer on it that's atomically accurate, measured to one on the ground, and there'll be a difference in time simply because of where it is and what it's doing. So our whole sense of time is completely subjective, which again is counterintuitive. You kind of think, yeah, clock time runs normally, but again, you get into quantum physics, quantum mechanics, then time just disappears. It falls apart. It goes backwards. You can have phenomena where the effect comes before the cause. Literally, as they measure it, it's like, what the hell? This whole thing called the uncertainty principle is you can't be certain of anything. You can predict possible outcomes, but again, until you examine what's going on, then an outcome presents itself, and you have to work as if all possible outcomes are happening at the same time to make any sense of it, which is so about Schrodinger's cat, that's where that comes from. You have to accept he's both alive and dead at the same time until you look in the box. In the quantum physics world, that's how that tends to work. So our whole sense of progression, linearity, is nonsense. You think when you fall asleep, you've no idea how long you've been asleep. You might get a sense of it's now light when it was dark before, but middle of winter, like 10, 12 hours of dark, you could have been asleep for an hour, 5 hours. You don't even know to look at the watch. Our whole sense of time is completely, not quite illusionary, but it's subjective. It's very dependent on what you're doing. So your sense of what's happening in terms of in time varies depending on who you are and what you're doing.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. Yeah. We kind of like every individual carries our own time with us in a way. You know, by our you know, and I think we interpret on an individual level time. I mean, didn't they do a study where they did away with a clock with a group of people, and their body clocks fell into a cicada kind of rhythm? You know, so is it cicada? No,
Circadian.
That's it. Thank you. Yes. And they fell into a rhythm, you know, their own body clocks did. And it was totally against getting up early in the morning and going off to work. And, you know, it was a lot more later in the day they would get up.
Basically, I screwed mine up.
Yeah.
I never used to start work as a therapist, so I worked till 1 o'clock in the afternoon, so I plunged into the evening. So I used to get up, stay out really late, and get up quite late. I can't go to bed early now. It's just impossible. I'll lie there for hours staring at the ceiling. I just cannot sleep. And circadian rhythm has been pushed forward, but so far, for years of doing this, you know, when I often do a lot of the podcasts I do in America, where I'm working till like 2 in the morning on live with them, you know, so I'm used to that shift of time. So for me, that is my experience. But it's often been said that we are fundamentally one of two people, humans. We're either like owls or larks. Larks get up early in the morning and can function very effectively early on, and they're awake pretty quickly, and they taper out as the day goes on, and by sort of mid-late evening they'll be knackered. And owls, who I am, will get up later naturally, slower waking up, but will wake up more as the day goes on, so that by the comes night time, until the early hours, they're really kind of wide awake. But our society is geared completely to the lark. You know, its whole thing is everyone, you start working at 9 o'clock, pretty much most jobs do, or earlier. You know, I just started later in the day and then working later on. It's like, well, you don't do that. That's overtime, mate. No, don't do that. So that's a societal question as well. But yeah, I mean, you can certainly affect your circadian rhythms while repeatedly keeping a pattern of late nights, getting up.
Are you aware of the experiment they did that the sorry, brain dropped out of reality for a minute then. Are you aware of the experiment that they did where they isolated people in a room where with no windows and no clocks, no time? They got given all the food that they needed and then they observed them.
Yeah,
and
they're called casinos.
Yeah, it didn't take them very long to go a little bit mad and not know what time it was, how long they'd been asleep for, and their actual patterns of the day just stopped, didn't it?
Yeah, they're called casinos. Exactly what casinos.
It's based upon that. I mean, I was thinking about a specific scientific experiment, but I suppose perhaps they've extrapolated from it to make that.
No outside light at all. You won't find a clock anywhere. Food's available 24/7. Drinks are available 24/7. If you're gambling, they'll bring you drinks and food at your table. You lose complete track of whether it's day or night. You really do at the casino. It's designed specifically to do that. They spray the oxygen levels in casinos are higher than normal to keep you awake. So
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. They said it's called casinos. That's exactly what they do. Keep you going.
Perhaps that's where they got the idea from the original experiments. They were like.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why I used to hate factories, because they don't have windows, a lot of them with outside daylight, and I used to hate it. I hated working in the factory, and perhaps it's a disorientation.
Of course, some of the lighting is actually terrible for you, the average lighting. I remember back at being one of my first jobs was working in the financial futures markets. That was based inside the Royal Exchange. There's a big building in London. It was literally a big courtyard inside it, and the life room was built inside the courtyard. But because it was in the courtyard, it had no external windows. But the lighting they used was incredible. Very well, we're talking about 30 odd years ago. It was strip lighting, but each bulb cost about 10 grand because it was vibrating at far higher frequency. It was like you could stand on the trading floor, look down, you think you're outside because it mimicked the daylight. Because for that very reason, so people would keep awake and keep going on trading and wouldn't feel headachy because they've been stuck in these ultraviolet lights. These are lighting all day. And as I said, these lights are incredibly expensive because they have that effect. And you see, you could stand and look down and you think you're outside. The lighting is incredible. And as one of your posting people there says, IKEA is the same. You get an idea going around the outside windows, where you are, there's no clocks. There's just this path that seems to be like a maze that leads you around the building. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny, isn't it, how we get manipulated? But no, you're quite right. With casinos, they like kind of, if you've got a hotel room above a casino, then that's what they'll do. They'll kind of like, they'll put extra oxygen in the room. You're quite right. They'll make it so that you will wake up at 2 in the morning and go down and spend money. They'll make it uncomfortable.
Yep, you've got no
uncomfortable.
The thing is that they found with that experiment that I was reading, where they isolated them in the box with no sense of time, is that they had to stop the experiment after a while because people went a little bit mad as well, because they did not have that connection to the circadian rhythm or a sense of time. So thus we don't have an internal sense of time, like you say, and it does make you a little bit wappy if you don't actually know. Yeah, because I'm sure I can't remember if they had to stop the experiment early because they were getting concerned.
Well, yeah, right.
The behavioural changes. I don't think they were permanent changes once they brought them back out into circadian rhythm. But it was just a link back to what we were saying about time being relative as well. It's like if we have no way of tracking time, it's sort of like does something strange to your brain as well.
I mean, we are geared obviously to go to bed when it gets dark and get up when it's light, because most of us experience that kind of slightly kind of sleepiness when the sun sets, getting to dusk. You always find you're a little bit kind of tired and start drifting off a little bit, because that's naturally when you would normally have gone to bed, and we would have done for millennia, because obviously you sleep at night when you can't do anything because there's no light. But yeah, that's obviously a modern thing we have to deal with now, but it's certainly something that we all experience, that kind of sleepy, sun's going down. Particularly if you're driving, it's hit you then, it's like, oh, of course it's sleepy, it's sun setting, because it's your brain's being told it's time to go to bed.
We have to have structure. We have to have sensation and relative states to Edward B. Titchener theorized about this with reality. We have to have structure, relative states, and if we don't have those three things, consciousness, sensations, images, and affective states, then we will go a bit mad, because we have to have that tangible, familiar, tangible input to ground us. If we don't have that grounding, we're just stuck in a room with nothing except ourselves will make us mad. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, but right, it is coming up, Andy, to 2 hours 42 minutes. Are you okay if I wound it up now to show?
I'll be fine.
Yeah, okay. Would you do me a favor, just stay on for 2 minutes afterwards? Is that all right? Yeah, that'd be brilliant. Natalie, are you okay if I wind this up? Okay, great. All right then. I just want to thank everybody very much for coming on, and and I want to thank Andy as well for being on the show. And before we go, I'm just going to mention also his website again, if that's okay. Okay. Here we go. Ninth Circle Press. And please just go have a little look, have a look at the books. Got loads of current titles. Fragment of, I can't even say that.
That's sold in 2 days, completely sold out. Fragment of the Greek Rhetorical Papyri. It's a key occult text to do with Aleister Crowley. I won't go the whole story now, but yeah, it's a reproduction of a book from the 1800s. Hadn't been republished before. It's been reset by me in a modern font to make it much easier to read. Lots of additional material with it as well, but it's sold out. It's coming out again. I shall be doing a second edition probably at the end of the year, because it's sold so bloody fast. And the other one that's still at sale is my friend Ian Chambers' book, which is on Judas and witchcraft. There is a strong connection between the two. All the other books I've published have been sold out. So
I can see, sold out titles here, forthcoming titles.
Nothing,
I haven't got anything at the moment, but I suppose that's
soon, very soon, announcement.
But please, people, give it go along, give it a review. Have a little look, and obviously, also, I'll just put up your Facebook as well quickly. Can
I just add that nightcirclepress.com or .co.uk, I own both of them. They go both to the site, so either one will take you there.
Okay. Right, I think this is it. Let's have a look. Here we go. Andy Mercer, his Facebook. So go over, give it a follow. Just have a little look at some of his stuff here. You can see a lot of his links as well on here. No, it's got a friends list. You haven't got me on the friends list. Look, where's my photo?
Natalie, you're on the phone.
Look, I can see. I can see. Look, I can see Golden Wonder there, look. But oh, blimey. Yeah. Oh, well. Anyway, yeah, give it a follow. Say hello. And have you done public speaking?
Oh, many times. Yeah.
Right. Any tips? Because I've got my first public speaking next week.
Okay, yeah, I'll give you some tips. What I always do is I actually write my talk out word for word, so I can follow it. If I get lost, it's always in front of me, so I type the whole thing out and just keep following it along. If you're not great with the crowds of people, don't look at anybody. Just scan across the people. Don't look at any one person, because no one knows who you're looking at, because they just see you looking across people. So if you're uncomfortable with looking at people, don't look at anyone. Just scan across, and enjoy it. People are there, they're interested to hear what you got to say, so say what you want to say. But yeah, definitely I find writing my talk word for word, I always do that, because it's there in front of me. If I lose my place, I can just see where I'm supposed to be. If you want to look up at the crowd, just look across the room, don't look at anybody. Sometimes you find yourself looking at one person, that can actually throw you a little bit, but just glancing out across the sea of faces without looking at anybody is comfortable. And if, like me, you wear glasses and distance becomes blurred, then it's even more effective. So you can't see everybody.
Yeah.
Right, it's I used to hate it. I'll be honest with you. I was never a big fan. I found it really uncomfortable. But I've done quite a bit now, and over the years I've kind of got better at it, because people will hear what you got to say, and they're interested to hear what you're saying. And just like doing the show, there are people out there listening and watching us. You can't see them, so you don't think about them. Just imagine they're not there. And if it's really, you've got to imagine them all naked. That could be quite helpful as well.
It's our first one. It's our first one next week. Now, Natalie's going to join me. She's going to be, because she lives up north. She lives like up that way. The bad weather and stuff. A lot of rain in it. So she's going to be kind of like having my back on screen on the stage.
Yeah, I'm
Okay,
virtual.
it's run by
apparently.
David Hobbs, who's the Essex UFO Paranormal group. And it's going to be at the Balmoral.
It's a good place. I used to run my own conferences. They named this art conference back in the 22.
Oh, you've been there?
Yeah, I ran 3 conferences there. The name was art. We did it 3 years in a row at the Balmoral Centre. I've been to those UFO talks before I moved to. I moved to Somerset 3 years ago, so I was around seeing those. So,
Right. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's my first one there. The it's going to be Dogman, Werewolf, Supernatural, and Decoding the Unknown. Just like kind of musings, really. Balmoral Community Centre, Salisbury Avenue, Westcliff-on-Sea, Essex. I am going to be streaming it. Now, I'm going to be streaming it on our Patreon channel. But yeah, I've still got to sort of like suss that out, what to do, because it incurs a little bit of cost on our part, on my part, going, the fuel, everything else, going doing that. So I was going to, but I may do it on. It depends what people think. If people are okay with, maybe if they like what they hear, contributing in chats, to help with the fuel cost and everything else that, and the setup cost, then I'll probably just stream it. But if people let me know what they would prefer, either a one-off, like kind of a price to watch, like a streaming price to watch, or if they would like to pay what they believe I'm worth. I'm not going to walk away with a lot, am I? I'll be lucky to get a bus ticket home. But but there's 2 ways. I might do it that way, and then let people decide as they're listening. If they want to pay by chat, they can do that to help out. That would be really great. But all right, so I won't drill into anyone's eyes then as I'm talking, Andy.
No, I find that was used most of it. I mean, some people. I know a friend of mine actually prefers to. They'll find one person in the audience and they'll talk to that one person. Attractive woman, actually, is a bloke, but yeah, that's how they do it. But I found that kind of not looking at anybody in particular, just almost because no one knows who you're looking at. They might think you look at the person next to them, but you're not actually looking at anybody. You're just sort of scanning the crowds. But a bit of that. People don't like you sit. If you just stand like this the whole time, it's not great. But just look across, Or if you see a face, have a chat with a friend, say, "I'm going to look at you when I'm talking," because it makes you feel comfortable. You do that.
Yeah. I mean, the problem, probably. Do you know what I'm expecting, Andy? I'm expecting really kind of like probably David Hobbs there. Even for a little while before he gets bored and goes, or someone coming in from the bus stop because it's raining.
No, I'm sure.
With a bag of chips, but they'll have a bag of chips. They'll be like sat themselves down. They'll probably have a wet, shaking their brolly off, and they see me on stage. They go, "What's he on about?"
Don't go to those things if they're interested. Well, why would you go if you're not interested? No, you have to
Yeah,
pay
exactly.
for it. So
Yeah.
no, my experience, I've never noticed. I've never had a heckler or anything like that. People come for these things, so they're interested. They want to know about this stuff. They're not there
Yeah, I think so. I think so. I hope so. I hope so. I hope I do a good job, and I will stream it. And then, if people like it, then that's a bonus. Then that's good. So that's the way. All right. Okay. Now, I shall say good night on behalf of everyone, and thank you very, very much for watching. We do really appreciate it. Yeah, thank you.